I hope you're all having a wonderful Saturday morning. Let's get this thing kicked off. We should be live. Hopefully, you all can hear me. Happy end of July. It's time for our July live stream. I'm going to let a little bit of time for people to get in here. So while I do, I'm going to babble a couple things at you. Number one, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I am dealing with some kind of weird like chest sinus cold thing, so I might have to like mute my mic and cough or something like that throughout the stream. Just be prepared for that stuff. Nobody likes the schmutz coming out of themselves, so it's been fun. So just as kind of a general guideline, help me help you. For anybody that has questions, make sure to at me, and like I'll do it in chat just so you see exactly what I'm talking about. You would just do this. That just highlights it, makes it really easy for me to see. And as we're answering questions or talking about certain topics, it doesn't necessarily have to be a question. You might just want me to talk about X. In the fish world, unlike Joel, which shout out to Corvus Oskin, I'm not a fan of babbling about politics in a live stream. Just because it's a wormhole I don't want to get into. I like fish a lot more than I like politics because everything's screwed. But yeah, no, thank you for the well wishes. Like I'm doing better than I was earlier this week. Just kind of dealing with the tail end of stuff getting out, and that's the fun part. It's not fun. It's not fun. So with that being said, I want to cover a couple things. Number one, I'm feverishly working on an update to the Fluval Lite video because Fluval updated their app for Android users. It hasn't happened yet for iPhone, but that's coming pretty soon, I would have to imagine. It probably has to go through. There's a slightly more strict iPhone certification process. I used to do this stuff for a living a long time ago. So it takes a little bit longer to get things out on iPhone typically, unless you're an iPhone specialist, and then usually you start with iPhone and then move it to the other stuff. So that'll be coming soon. There's a completely new mode as well as a couple other features. Number one is called Pro Mode, and that is really, really wicked. It allows you to actually like plot bell curves of light and time your light throughout the day. You can do siestas in the app now, so you don't have to use my weird hack. So just look forward to that. I'll be doing a video on that. I think I have to finish the rest of the filming today, and then I have to do a bunch of editing, and I'll try to get it out. I think next Saturday I'm going to bump the video I meant to do, and that will come out instead because I know a lot of people are looking forward to that. And some of the settings are a little confusing. I've already seen some folks that are having trouble with it. Just talking with a couple folks in Joel's chat and his Friday live stream. So I just want to really demonstrate that to folks to make it really easy to understand. Oh, iPhone was updated yesterday. Perfect. That's great. So yeah, the new app is sweet. It is so sweet. No joke, Thursday morning, I was awake at 5 a.m. Playing with the pro mode of the app for a light that was in my downstairs below me, messing with its settings. And then I went downstairs after my morning shower and sat and previewed everything I just screwed with after I kind of figured it all out. And it was pretty excited about it. So look forward to that. That'll be coming basically as soon as I can get it out, within reason. I want to launch on my normal schedules, but soon. That's my priority right now. Number two, tank of the week. So I actually have a graphic for this. We did this giant vote on the community page, this one right here. And as you can see, tank of the week absolutely dominated this poll. So this was basically just a comment from the Longhouse Inc. that he was like, I'd like to see the tanks more often. It's like, all right. And I kind of had several different options for folks, just because I know, me personally, I'm one of those people who, like, if I don't know there's a major change or something interesting, I don't tend to show tanks, just because I don't want to just be like, oh yeah, and then here's this tank again. Nothing's new, because I've got so much stuff to talk about that um, it's like I don't want to like miss out on what I deem to be like good educational content just to show off. Like, hey, here's week number 5 of the tank. I need to trim those plants. Something really simple like that. And for Fun RC, yes, I do have live chat, not top chat. I've had more than a few experiences with the chat problem in the past, so not necessarily my live streams, but other live streams. Anyway, so this like just absolutely crushed tank of the week. What this is going to do is give us once a week. I'm going to add a video, so you'll have 2 videos a week. I'm gonna do my absolute best to get that done. Some weeks my schedule will be so horrendous I might have to skip a week, and I'll let people know in the community page, but I'm gonna do my best not to. So basically Wednesdays is my goal, where I'll put out a tank of the week, and we'll pick a single tank. We'll do like a 10, maybe 15-minute video going over everything in that tank. If it hasn't been introduced, or if there's some major changes, we'll talk about all those. The fish, the plants, all that kind of stuff. So thanks to Longhouse. I mean, this is something that had a really strong voting poll. But also, I want to note, like, and I'll say this in the first Tank of the Week video too. You can see right there, there's only 102 votes. So basically, 102 people have decided the fate of a 3,000 subscriber channel. So for those of you who pay attention to the community page, thank you very much. But more importantly, if you don't pay attention to the community page, like if you're a subscriber, maybe you're not a subscriber, you should be. You should be. You literally have like more power than every other person watching, because you get to directly influence. And if you think about it, every person there is like 1%, right? It's just barely 100 votes. That's 1%. Every person is worth 1%, which you would have earth-shattering power in a country like the United States or any of the European countries if you represented 1% of the vote on your own. So, check out the community tab. There's a lot of things there. I put up a poll pretty regularly that lets you guys control exactly what kind of content is coming for you as fast as I plan to do it. So it's kind of one of those things where like I'll have 3 or 4 videos in mind, and it basically is which one do you guys want first, and that's usually exactly what I go to do. So with that being said, just again a reminder for some of the folks that have just showed up, which we're already over 30 viewers. That's pretty sweet. Thank you. Just at Bentley Pascoe, if you have a question, it makes it a lot easier for me to see them. And I will be answering some questions that came in the community tab, just because I want those folks who couldn't make it to have their questions answered. So we'll start in the Q&A, and also I just want to pay attention to this back here. Notice there's some different fish in there. I got some sweet fish from Dean. All right, so I'm gonna go into chat for a couple questions, and then I'll answer some of the community tab stuff, and I'll just kind of bounce between chat and the community tab. Just a heads up, my general goal. Most of this has been some well wishes and general morning chanter. Chanter? I think I meant to say banter and then chat. And English is really hard in the morning. I'm just gonna put that out there. Betty Be Good Jr., I saw a bunch of your comments pretty recently, and I have not had time to check out your channel yet, although I plan to, just as a heads up. So you got a Sea Chem title, which is pretty awesome. How long should you keep your existing top fin filter before going to the title? So if you have like a thing of ceramic media inside the top fin, if you have any added media other than the cartridges that are in there, you can just take those over to the new filter and let that thing basically propagate from there, and it'll do so very quickly. Otherwise, I would say run the other filter for about a week while your title gets its bacteria load built up, and then you should be safe. I think a week's a good time. If you really want to be super, super careful, go 2 weeks. But yeah, you're fine. And then you can just get rid of the old filter. And really what I would almost do is I would take your media from the old filter, because you just mentioned you do have media, put it in the new filter, but keep running the top fin for about a week. and then take the top fin out, and you're going to be fine. Those titles are absolute beasts. I love those things. But that being said, so are the Aqua Clears. They're both really good filters. Do I have the flu? Or did I have the flu? No, it was some kind of chest gunk. It was not the flu. I never had like chills or fever. I'm only now getting anything up in my nose for the last, like, I think 3 days. The first few days it was all down in my chest, and I was just coughing a lot and had a lot of like schmutz coming out, you know, the gunk. And that might be TMI for some of you folks, but basically I've just been coughing and hacking stuff up at work, and that's been real lovely, and my coworkers are looking at me like I'm some kind of like individual with the plague. But that's kind of the thing. Marshall, for anybody who doesn't know, Marshall, who's in chat there, he's actually the owner of AQ PKG, or Aqua Packaging. The guy is really awesome dude. I got an opportunity to meet him in person. We had a talk about some things. So we might do a video in the future about how to ship plants like in the dead of winter and how to do it right, for those of you. Because like there's lots of videos about shipping fish out there, and I'm no shipping expert when it comes to fish. Although my last shipment, not a single problem. Everything came perfect, and I shipped, I think, 3 times as many fish as I did the first time I shipped. So I'm getting better. But plants, on the other hand, you know, they are in summer, spring, fall, you basically don't have to worry about anything. But when it gets super cold out, you actually do need to worry. And there are some plants that are much more fragile, like floaters, that you can successfully ship. It's just not super easy. And it's some of the things we talked about going over just to kind of help folks, because there's really nothing on it. So let me get one of the questions out of chat, and then I'm going to hit one from the community tab. Whoop, almost scrolled out of there. So from Cichlids23, since I'm the plant doctor, I don't know that I'm the plant doctor. I'm just good at making them grow. You have a 29 gallon with red tiger lotus and dwarf. I'm assuming that's dwarf sage. Is doing great. The wisteria melted away in like 3 weeks. Okay, so here's the thing. Wisteria, water sprite, and some of their variants like that, because there's a broadleaf version of water sprite that's a little less common that I've grown in the past. They are crazy nitrate hounds. So they will melt very quickly if they don't have just a ludicrous amount of nitrates to suck up. And I'm not saying like you need 400 parts per million nitrates in your tank to where it's going to be risky for your fish. But my best experience with those kind of plants have either been in more densely populated tanks, or where they're the only fast-growing plant in the tank and everything else takes like no nutrients whatsoever. I've actually had my best experience with wisteria and water sprite floating it. I've had more trouble with it planted in the ground than I've ever had with it floating. I treat it like a floating plant typically when I'm growing it. It's one of my favorite beginner plants just because it's so like brain dead easy. And it can go into tanks with no fertilizers. Although what I tend to like to do is in the tanks where I do have those, rather than fertilizing like say once a week with my Easy Green or twice a week if I have a heavier plant load, I will do a smaller dose every day or every other day. So an example would be like if I'm doing a 100-gallon tank, right? That would be 10 pumps a week for just medium light, or rather low light. If I'm doing medium light, I might do like 15 to 20 in 2 different doses. Instead, what I would do is I would take and do like two pumps a day. So it'd be like 14 total pumps throughout the week in low light. And then in high light, I would do 3 pumps a day. So it just has a continual small amount of nitrates in there. And just test your nitrates, make sure it's not getting too high, and just adjust your nitrates from there. As long as your water tests where you're typically somewhere between like 10 and 20 parts per million nitrates at any given day, like a day after you fertilized, you're fine. So it's just one thing. Those plants are super nitrate hogs, so they can kind of like consume themselves and melt away. And also, if it was not properly converted, it's going to melt pretty hard anyway. It kind of sucks. I wish more places did what the co-op does and converted their plants ahead of time before sending them out. Yeah. Yeah. So I lied. I'm going to take one more from chat because I saw something I kind of like. And Uv Deloriac. So, do I have any experience with pothos and lucky bamboo in aquariums? So, I've grown pothos like out of the tank, like how you would in a filter, where just the roots are in the tank. I have another plant right now that's in my tank where some of the rainbows are in the grow room, and I'm so bad at remembering the name of it. I've had somebody comment on it. I've had a local club member tell me like 3 different times, and because it's not an aquatic plant that I'm growing and propagating really heavily, it never sticks in my brain. But yeah, I've had some experience with it. I've never tried lucky bamboo. I don't find it that attractive, so I don't care about it. You just treat it like an immersed plant. You just want the roots in the water, and then you want the rest of the plant out of the water, and they become amazing nitrate filtration for you. It's actually really good. Pothos is like super durable, and there's a few other things like pothos that can take harder water too, where you can put them in the filter of like African cichlid tanks and stuff like that, and it will just do everything that a planted tank would do for you, but in tanks where you naturally would not have plants because either the fish will destroy them or the water parameters aren't suited for most of the plants that we keep in planted aquariums. Because most plants really like to be somewhere between like 6.5, 7.5 pH, maybe up to 8. And then once you get past 8, they're really not thrilled, except for like, Java fern can deal with it, Anubias can deal with it. There are some species of Alisteria that can, because there are some that naturally occur in like Tanganyika. So they're used to that really high, like 9.3 pH. But for the most part, like your Pogostemons, your Ludwigias, your Rotalas, they're kind of soft water plants in the grand scheme of things, in that they don't like hyper hard, hyper alkaline water like you would get in most of, like, say, the African cichlid tanks. So something to keep in mind. It's really simple. They need such minimal light. Just put the roots in the water and they'll just go hog wild on you. I'm going to take a little sip of water if you don't mind. As you can hear my voice deteriorating while I talk. Okay, so I'm going to do the first question from the community tab, just because those folks deserve a little love too. And this comes from Pete. So his question is pretty simple. Is a short, more intense highlight period better for plant max growth and health versus long periods with less intense light? Yes and no. So this is all about what plant we're talking about. Let me give you an example. Sword plants do not care about high light. They actually tend to do better in medium and low light. They care more about long exposures of light. So if you were doing only 6 hours of light and you wanted to keep Amazon swords, they're never going to look amazing. But you could have like ADA crazy lights or UNS Titans or something really, really insane. Like spend, $700 on Kessel lighting for your tank, fill it full of Amazon swords, but only have them on 6 hours a day, and your swords are going to look okay. But if you had like a Beamswork light on 12 hours a day, they'd look really good because they like that really long exposure. They don't need that super intense light. They want exposure. Now, something that's like a hyper-colored Rotala, for example, so any of like your mini butterflies, H-Ra, these bright red plants, a lot of those prefer intensity of lighting over duration of lighting. And most of them will have kind of a power photosynthetic period of about 4 hours. So they're doing most of their really strong photosynthesis in about a 4-hour window. So that's where you'll see, and this will be coming up in the Fluval video for the updated settings in Pro mode. Natural light occurs in a bell curve, right? So it's going to go like this. You're going to start ramping up. It's going to hit a high point. It's going to level off for a little bit, and then it's going to dip back down. Right? Sunrise, sunset, high noon, the early afternoon when you've got the most intense, hottest light. That's how nature does things. So it's during that like middle part where it does its most intense photosynthesis and where it gets its strongest color. So that kind of like ramp up into intense lighting for 2 or 3 hours and then ramp down is basically a way that we kind of mimic nature for those plants that like that high intense light and do those brighter colors. Things like your Anubias, your Java ferns, they don't care. They just don't. But it's mostly it's all about what plant you're looking at. Crypts, like all this stuff behind me, they'll take 13 hours of light. They'll take 4 hours of light. They don't care. They tend to do better with few exceptions, like Pink Flamingo, for example, wants very intense light. But most of your green and brown ones, give them 12 hours of light and they do way better. I heard my voice crack. And it's bad when you hear your own voice crack. And you're old. Just old. So I hope that answers your question really well, Pete. It's all about the plant. If you got really colorful stuff, intensity matters. If you have a lot of your kind of like simple basic plants, usually they care more about a long photo period of low light than they do about hyper intense lighting. Okay, back to chat. Let me see here. I knew I had something else in here. I want to get it. Let's see if there was any question before Marshall's. Otherwise, I'm doing Marshall's. Yeah, Marshall, you're up. Okay, I'm going to make sure I read this correct. So, an immersed setup with time sprayers, do you think it's possible to trick plants into believing they are submerged? Let me give you, let me answer your question without a think. I know you can. And let me explain. So, a really good friend of mine who's like my crypt super guru. This guy is like crazy reclusive, refuses to be on camera, refuses to even be on a microphone. I have been kind of prodding this guy for 1.5 years to do a video and a voiceover of his tank, and he just won't. He's super shy. He's very reclusive. However, he's a super rare plant keeper. His setup was designed so that the plants would grow like they were submerged in an immersed setup. He kept the humidity so high in his setup. He'd use a 40 breeder as a base. So if you think about it, you have like your soil here, and everything was cupped off, right? But then he had a fully sealed lid, so it would keep the humidity so high in there, because he'd keep like this much water in the bottom of the tank, and then the immersed plants would sit so that part of the cups were in the water, so they're constantly kind of soaking up water, and he'd come in and he'd add water every day to make sure it stayed very humid, so that like cryptnuriae in their growing immersed looked exactly like they would submerged. So if you went really high tech with time sprayers and all that kind of stuff, and you keep a good humidity level, so much so that the soil they're in is kind of constantly just sopping wet like it's in water, but the rest of the plants are out of that, but in a very humid environment, they are going to look like that. They're going to look submerged. Certain plants won't do it as well. An example would be Java fern species, so any of the microsorums, they tend to just not show, because it has to do with the lighting they're receiving. They'll show the colors they would from a typical immersed setup where they're up in open air anyway, because of the light they're getting. I know this because there's a couple of microsorghum species in the first Tank of the Week episode that will look completely different underwater than they do immersed, and they were grown in his same setup, and they look like they would immersed. And they're converting now to fully submerged, and a couple of them are really angry about that. They're not very happy. But they're healthy enough that they'll be fine. Yeah, the big thing is consistency. So it's just making sure in that kind of immersed setup rig that you keep it hyper humid the entire time, and it will look like that, but it will grow because it's getting atmospheric CO2. It will grow faster. So it's kind of like best of both worlds. I'm lazy. I don't want to set up that kind of thing. I just do everything submerged, even though I should at the crazy level I've been of doing plants. I should be doing that level of stuff. I like growing it in my fish tank. What can I say? So, next. Oh, yeah. Barbara Jackson brought up this good point. If you have a cat that likes to eat plants, don't do pothos. Yeah, we talked about pothos earlier. Just because pothos can make cats really, really sick. There's a chemical that's in the leaves, and there's lots of cats who will eat leaves no matter what, even if it's a plant that they wouldn't normally eat, so it's not a grass plant. Just be prepared for that. So if you have cats, don't do pothos. There's lots of other options. I mean, that might be a case where Lucky Bamboo is actually the choice, is if you have cats. I have this weird kind of tree that my cats can't get near, so it's fine. We got some folks with Beamsworks. Cool. Yeah, so I'm better be good. I've tried really hard. He's just super shy. So the how-to basic kind of plans for profit crypt video that I put out, which I probably should do a newer version of it eventually, just because it's make it a little higher quality. That's a lot of that is based off some tips and tricks that I learned from him and started employing myself. So like the grape leaf trick, that came from him. And if you're like, what's the grape leaf trick? Go watch the video. But that's stuff that I learned from him when I started getting into rarer crypts, because I was getting almost all my rare crypts from him. And he's just, dude really knows his stuff. But at the same time, he's kind of changed his includes. Like, he shut his immersed rig down. So a bunch of the rare plants that I've had come in recently is because he brought all of his stuff into his immersed rig to me that he had left over that didn't go to like one or two other members of the club who they did their orders together and he was their backup. So it's kind of interesting. So Better Be Good is asking, how can I add extra nitrogen to my tank to stop Amazon sword from turning yellow from the middle out? Sorry, I gotta pimp the stuff I use. Honestly, just the easiest thing is to slightly overdose your fertilizer. So whatever, if you're using a liquid fertilizer like Easy Green, they tend to be highest in nitrates than any other thing in there. Just put a couple extra little bits of it. So if you're, like, again, we'll go back to that. Let's say you're a 100-gallon tank, right? You're doing 10 pumps. Do 12, right? Ooh, Marshall, thank you very much, sir. It's just one of those things. Just add a little bit more. I think Flourish does have specifically a nitrogen-only supplement, which you could do that way. I personally hate the Flourish line, and it's not that it's a bad product. It's a fine product. I just hate having like 15 bottles of stuff and having to, like, one capful of this per 20 gallons, one capful of this per 50 gallons, 3 milliliters of this per 20 gallons. I hate things that are that complicated. It's part of why I don't do EI dosing. I don't use powdered ferts, even though a friend just gave me a giant box full of them. So now I probably should, do dry ferts and mix my own. And the name is so accurate. It is so much easier to just be like, I'm not getting enough nitrates in that tank, or I'm not getting enough X in this tank. Yeah, I'll just add like an extra couple pumps. Or like, scatter it out so that you have a more consistent string of those nutrients in your water. So like I said, where if you do fertilizing every day or every other day, so that way your water kind of constantly has a lower dose of fertilizer the whole time. The other thing is, if it's a sword, man, just jam root tabs under that thing. Like C-Chem root tabs, I have never had problems with my swords when I've had C-Chem root tabs under them. There's some other root tabs out there, like there's the Aqua Grow, that are like these big red clay discs. But I mean, they're all the same. You could do the Nylock G stuff, you could do the Aquarium Co-op stuff. It's all about your personal choice. I just happen to use the Seachem ones because they are like a big enough brick, but are still easy to bury into my substrate. I've just used them for a long enough time. I've had good results, so I keep using them. That being said, the aquarium co-op stuff is significantly cheaper, and it's basically the same chemical makeup. Just don't use Osmocote. Please, whatever you do, don't use Osmocote. And for those who are wondering why I say that, I have seen enough horror stories from Osmocote, and I've had one locally with a friend, because Osmocote will produce more ammonia than a lot of the other things, mostly because it's designed for outdoor plants and not for being in water systems. That being said, there are tons of people with dirty tanks that are like, I only use Osmocote, I've never had problems. But for every one horror story out of 100 that have it perfect, that horror story is horrific, and I would never want that to happen to anyone that I give advice to, just because it's bad, you know? You never want that feeling. Like, as someone who has lost an entire tank of fish within the last 9 months, you never want that feeling. It is just absolutely miserable. And I'm going to answer a question from a while ago, and then I'm going to hit the community tab, and then we'll come back to chat. So Alyssa asked me, what fish did I get from Dean? So when Gary Lang was in town last June, so a little over a year ago, there were 2 rare species that had been the first time they were ever auctioned in the United States, and I think ever auctioned globally. Now, some have gone into private hands through other means, but as far as being auctioned, this is the first time they'd ever been done. The first was the Running River Rainbow, which, as you guys know, I have downstairs. The second is the second fish that the Rainbow Fish Conservation Fund is working on. So all the guys that are down at the University of Canberra. And that was the Melanitania malanda gold, specifically from Wallace Road. And that's what is now in my tank. The group that Dean had, he only ended up with like 6 that made it through. They're just kind of fragile by nature, but these ones are all pretty good. There's 5 males, 1 female. So that poor little girl has both all sorts of attention to deal with, which is not necessarily the best, but at the same time has the pick of the litter. So, but they get along pretty well. They're a really cool little dwarf rainbow. They only get about yay big. So, 2 inches basically. Flexing on you. Yes, I am flexing on you, Scottish Aquatics. And then they get this, you probably saw it earlier, they get this beautiful, beautiful kind of dusky red color. And they're really neat because they display like a pseudomcgill would. So rather than getting like the head stripe and kind of doing this like shimmy and shake, the males will splay their fins fully out like a pseudomcgill would, and then just like circle around each other. And it's super cool to watch that in like a full-size rainbow, because most of the big rainbows don't do that. They'll maybe flare their fins a little bit, but they don't just hold them open the entire time like a peacock or something. And it's really cool to see in a bigger rainbow compared to, say, like a pseudomcgill. So yeah, they're a really neat fish. They're not very big, and they don't need a ton of water. So they're actually like 6 of them are fine in this flex, this is the 15-gallon flex. And as you can see, it's planted all sorts of crazy with just a ton of crypts. They love sitting and weaving in and out of the crypts. They've been doing really, really well ever since I got them. And so thanks, Dean. I know he's probably not watching, but Dean, thank you, man. I've been really loving these fish. They've been really fun to watch from my desk. And that'll be a tank. Like, I don't really show this tank almost ever, just because it's kind of like my personal tank. There's 2 tanks in my bedroom, this one and a little 20 long. Those are, they're really kind of just there for my own therapeutic enjoyment, if you will. But this thing is, kind of constantly in the background. So we'll actually get a real proper look through this tank and a tank of the week at some point, and go through some of the plants, because there's some actually pretty rare crypts in this thing too, that I've never sold. I've never even taken out of this tank. I just let them sit in there. So with that being said, we'll go to question 2 from the community tab. Shout out to the guys in the community. So this is from Kyle. What are a couple of rare guppy strains I have my eye on getting? Okay, so here's the thing. I both like and don't like guppies. I don't like guppies to the level of, say, like Kang from Twin City Guppies or the Chubby Guppy, who are gonna like collect a ton of strains of guppies. I like one species of guppy, and I like really enjoying that one species for a long time. I'm weird in that I like keeping things for a long time. A lot of people will like kind of go through cycles or follow trends or try to be the next trendsetter. That's not me, man. You don't do rainbow fish and want to be a trendsetter. Like, they take way too long to raise. But there is actually a species that if I can find it, I will go for. And I just realized I didn't prepare media for this, and I should have. So, and to be clear, it's not that I dislike guppies. I just don't, I don't have like the hardcore collectoritis that some of the big guppy nerds do. I respect it. Like, I cannot tell you that if I get an opportunity to go to Minnesota and walk through Kang Lee's place and check out like the horde of guppy strains that Twin City Guppies has, I'm going to be like a kid in a candy store, because I've always liked guppies. The first tank I can ever remember owning as a kid in my bedroom was this like 5 or 6 gallon old glass lemonade container that had been turned upside down and turned into a tank by my dad with a little air-powered breeder box in it. And it was just nothing but male fancy guppies, just generic guppies back in the 80s. And I absolutely loved that thing. You know, it was it's just something I sat there as a kid, and it had this like yellow flower pattern on the outside of the glass. And then all the guppies inside were like, you know, reds and greens and all that kind of stuff. It was just fantastic to enjoy as a kid. And it's one of those memories that is like just burned into my brain. I will never forget that as my first, it was like first my tank. Because most of the tanks in the house were like these bigger tanks. They were for the whole family, you know, stuff like that. That was my tank. And I did none of the maintenance on it, let's be clear, but it was the thing where like I absolutely loved it. My dad set it up for me. He's like, "Oh, just give the kid a bunch of guppies, and I'll make only boys so they can't breed." So you know, kind of a shout out there. Give me just one moment if you don't mind. That's why we mute the mic. Oh Lord! All right. So the strain I want. Let me see if I can find it real fast. You're gonna hear me typing on my keyboard. It's from Luke Roebuck, which, what a coincidence! I have Luke Roebuck guppies now, and I want more because I'm a weirdo. But he has this really cool strain of guppy called that is a magenta something, and somebody has to still have this fish somewhere. I'm gonna try and find it real fast. I know this is the super exciting part of the stream where I am not the one thing I didn't prepare myself for, because you know, why would I be smart about this? Even though I read all the questions ahead of time and should have just known better. So like he had like some of the like Pingu Pinks and stuff like that a lot of people had done, and they're all cool, and all sorts of lace guppies. Of course, the Blue Hawaiian Moscows came from Luke Roebuck. But there's this one crazy guppy. Yeah, here it is. Okay, it's a red bicolor magenta, and they were like just becoming available right as he passed away. I'm gonna quickly save this image. This is the most exciting stream known to man. But I really want you guys to see this because it's super cool. I know. This is the worst. I should find a different question to answer while I monkey with this. Oh god, that's way bigger than it needs to be. Whoop. I want you to just look at this fish. So this is called a red bicolor magenta. which is a Luke Roebuck guppy. And I mean, just look at this crazy color in this fish. You can see those magenta tones in that one that's not in focus in the back. Like, it's just so cool looking. And like, Kang, if you can ever find these for me, I'm gonna love you forever, dude. I'm just gonna put that out there. Like, anybody, Chubby Guppy, I know that you're a big Luke Roebuck fan. This is the one guppy I will kind of passively be hunting for probably years, because I don't know that they're gonna be around. Just so many of them are kind of gone from Luke Roebuck, but this fish is so cool looking. And the person that my Blue Hawaiian Moscows came from, Leanne, so I'm going to make this a little smaller while I keep talking here. Woo! Perfect. Yeah, and some people don't like the pink. That's cool. I do. I think it's neat. It's unique. But this was the other fish that she really liked. When we were talking, when I was picking up the Blue Hawaiian Moscows for her, she actually brought that one up. And I was like, that's the other one I've been looking for. But it's this is just such a cool... cool fish that this would be the other one I would look for. And I'm sure there's another magenta gene around, but I would want something really close to this, where it has an almost kind of metalhead appearance to the front, and then this like great red magenta color in the back. It's just such a pretty fish. And I would be curious. I've never seen the females for this. I would hope that they still look pretty great, but I hope that answers your question, Kyle. Okay, so back to chat. Don't forget, guys, if you do have questions or a topic you want me to talk on, make sure to @Bentley Pascoe. It makes it a lot easier for me to find stuff and answer them. I'm gonna mute my microphone. I need to blow my... Okay. There was something else in here that I saw that I really wanted to answer, and then I wanted to make sure that the community tab folks are getting their love. Or maybe I'm just like... Oh, that's right. Where do all the poor female guppies go? Well, back then, like, a lot of stores, in the like, 80s especially, it was actually harder to get female guppies just because they were trying to only sell the males because they wanted to keep all the females for breeding at the distributors. Because like today, guppies just sold like crazy because they were easy to take care of. And honestly, I would say 80s guppies are way tougher than today's guppies. I'm pretty sure you could have put 80s guppies outdoors in the cold and they wouldn't care. Like, they were so tough and hardy a fish. And nowadays, like, I mean, part of it is just the genetic work we've done to get these really cool strains. It makes them inherently a weaker fish. It takes away all those wild genetics that make them tough, that make them durable, in favor of pretty colors. We get farther away from the natural kind of Trinidadian guppies and stuff like that are out there, that are super hardy fish and, have to deal with being basically a food source for a lot of things. So they breed prolifically, and they're tough and quick to get these giant, delta tails and all that kind of stuff. It takes away a lot of the inherent wild traits that make them hardy. But in the 80s, I swear guppies were unkillable. And I mean, you're like, yeah, right, you could kill guppies. Yeah, it's just like goldfish. You could get a goldfish at a fair and it'd be dead 2 days later. And sometimes you get that goldfish at a fair that you were like, how do I get rid of this thing? It won't go away. I had one of those, by the way. I had a fair goldfish that at one point lived in my dad's garage. So we had this detached garage in my old house when I was a kid. And he lived in a 125 that only had 6 inches of water, was never filtered, because it was underground filtration unit, and the airflow at several times had stopped, because the pump was basically dead and dying and dead. It just kind of beat it on it to get it to work again. And keep in mind, my dad was a koi keeper, so he's used to fish can just take it. not I'm not trying to harp on my dad, but the 80s knowledge was not so good. It's not like today where we have the internet and we can learn all sorts of stuff and realize like all the mistakes we've made really, really fast. And that goldfish was just, the water was solid green. That goldfish was invincible. We were taking that tank down to go to my aunt, so she needed a big tank for her big frontosa, and she did Africans. And the caveat from me as a kid, because I would go out every day and check on the goldfish and give the goldfish a little bit of flake, because he was just fine as can be. He didn't care. He's just a big old comet, and he was like this big, in 6 inches of water. Didn't care. Didn't care. The fish did not care. And he went to my aunt. He lived like another 10 years before he finally passed on, and like it was crazy. Like he was living with African cichlids and just like, meh, don't care. Fish is crazy. The craziest goldfish I've ever seen in my life. Most fair fish are like, we'll be lucky if it lasts 2 days. It's a feeder goldfish. This guy was like, nah, it's a solid like 14-year lifespan. It's unreal. Ooh, somebody working on magentas. You'll have to send me pictures of those, Chubby Guppy. I want to see the difference between them, between Luke's and those. John Ebson, speaking of Leanne, this is John, is Leanne's son. I have not tried to contact Luke's local club. Frankly, every time I think about it, I'm like at work, I'm crazy busy, and then it goldfishes right out of my brain because I'm at work and I'm crazy busy. I gotta do that though. I gotta get in touch with his club because I want to see if anybody has those magentas, because I really want them. They're really cool. I don't know where I'm gonna put them, but I want them. Let's see here. Ooh, you had Hawaiian blue magentas. I've never heard of those, Chewy. I'd have to see them through Philip Shattuck. That's good to know. I'll have to keep that name in mind. Let's see here. Friday Fish Facts showing up. What's up, Ron? How you doing, buddy? Yeah, man. 80s. Oh, dude. So Alhana Suki is talking about this. So, like the 80s knowledge of taking out your tank every 6 months and cleaning it out completely. So when we kept bettas, my mom, which bless her heart because we didn't know better, would take the betta out of its current bowl and its current water and put it in a cup, like a drinking glass. Completely clean out the bowl. Put fresh water from the tap in. Put the betta back in there. Betta didn't care. Betta ain't got time for that. Like the things you do in the 80s, right? And after a while, like we did some different stuff because we tried using banana plants. It was like the really the only live plant I ever kept as a kid. And we did those because they were so small. We could keep them in like little betta tanks. And I remember having like a 10-gallon that had dividers in it so we could keep 3 bettas in a tank. And we had this one male on the far like left-hand side of the tank who hated the male on the far right-hand side of the tank. And he would jump into the center container, completely leave that betta alone, didn't care, and that betta just was like, all right, what are you doing? And then he'd jump over into the right-hand side so that he could fight the one on the right. Because, you know, they were clear glass, so they could see each other, because we didn't know better. After, I think, like, the 4th time it happened, we tried switching them to see if maybe he just wanted to be on that side of the tank. No, he jumped all the way back over to the left. So eventually, I think we found a lid for it to make sure that it would be fine. Thankfully, so like our water, just to answer, because Ron's mentioning this, there's so little chlorine in Seattle's water, especially even back then, that you almost don't need to. It'll just gas off normally because we do run like air stones and stuff. But yeah, I remember this one betta that would jump. I never saw it, but he would come back and he'd be in the other guy's side of the tank, and he'd have fought a little bit, but he never like did some serious damage. It was more like just kind of some kind of display of dominance or something. I don't know. He had something in his head. It was just, I had to be top kick, and the one in the middle, I don't care about that guy. He's cool, apparently. Oh man, so fish are so crazy. I'm gonna do one more from the community tab, just because we're getting through. We're at almost the first hour mark. Woo. So don't forget, if you guys have questions, anything you want me to talk about, at Bentley Pascoe, and then whatever your question or topic you want me to speak on. It doesn't necessarily have to be a question. So from VB23, who he's been following me for a long time, and he talks to me on Instagram pretty regularly, asking me questions, and I feel bad sometimes. I gotta kind of tell him like, dude, I'm at work. I can't really get into a long conversation, but here you go. So, what is my favorite fish food brand, and do I like North Fin? So it's so funny. I do a really large mixture of food. I don't like use just one thing. Even in flake, which I use as kind of a staple most of the days, I use like 4 different flakes. So I don't have, I don't think I have a specific singular favorite fish food. If I were to say that currently, just given what I've tried, I would actually have to say it's Tropical's Supervit line. They have like granules, tabs, flake. I really like the flake and I really like the tabs. Some of the granules are really good. Some fish don't go for them, some do. It just kind of depends. I have tons of the stuff from when my friend Sarah Bills, who owns Cascadia Aquatics, was carrying it for a while, and then it ended up on Amazon, and it was no longer kind of like the more unique premium food. So she went to something even crazier and nicer, that is like my kind of secret weapon for the guppies. Which eventually maybe I'll show you guys that stuff. It's really cool. But that Supervit flake, it's made by a company in Poland, if I remember correctly. It's really nice stuff, and it's not very expensive. It's the same as what would cost you to buy, the equivalent size tin of like Tetracolor. Which, speaking of Tetracolor flake, I know that Lucas prescribes to the school of granules. I prescribe to the school of flake because I like being able to powder my foods whenever I want. So if baby fish need it, I can feed the same food they will get as an adult, just in a smaller, more powdered form. So that being said, I prefer that over granules because it's easy to do in my fingers rather than having to like grab a pestle and mortar out and grind it up and make a batch of it that way. It's just kind of easier on me. I actually like Tetracolor. I think it's a perfectly fine flake. I like Sarah Vipan. It's nice, although I've noticed some of my fish don't like it, and most of them do. But like the party animals, for example, they don't really take to it very fast. Where like if I put the Supervit tabs in, which is like basically the same as a Sarah Onip tab, they're effectively the same thing. They go crazy for that stuff. So yeah, that's it. I guess there's kind of like a mixture of things. And then the other thing I really love that Co-op had for a while, no longer carried, and then I think they're going to carry it again. Or if so, I'm going to just make them order me a bunch because I know they're carrying the makers. Zoomed has a spirulina flake that is dirt cheap for like a big canister of it. It's like $12, and it's really good. Like the Leopoldi angels love that stuff. The Shelleys love that stuff. I could feed them that and only that, and I think they would be happy. Although for the angels, I want to give them something that's a little bit different protein mixed in too. So they get like live baby brine and things like that. But I like that kind of mixture of flake. Honestly, if I could take all 4 of those flakes, put them in a big bin and mix them up and not have to worry about the food expiring, I would do so. I would just do this big like crazy grinder of food and just be completely content with that. Now, to answer the second part of the question, do I like North Fin? I have never tried it. I don't. I'm trying to think. I think recently Co-op started carrying it, so I get a lot of my food supplies there, unless I'm trying something from some other local business that I know. So like, I like a whole bunch of stuff, but it's kind of what I can get easily. So I've never tried North Fin. I know a lot of people like it, but I haven't had. I don't have the reason to change foods, if that makes sense. Like, I've had so much good experience with what I'm using that there's nothing telling me like, oh man, these fish don't like that food, I better find something different. that, or I'm not seeing them get good color or whatever that, the reason to change food would be. So that being said, like, would I try it if I was ever sent a sample from Northfin? Sure. If Northfin wants to sponsor me on their food, terrible joke, but um, I definitely would be something I want to try. Like, I've tried all sorts of stuff. I've tried like Hikari foods, and I don't like most of them. Although the Vibra Bites, that stuff's really sweet. I love Fluval bug bites. I think those are a really great food. They're sweet, sweet, sweet. And yeah, there's the old peppermill. Yes, I know that that's something I can do. I'm just lazy and haven't. And usually I want to produce like a big batch of it. So a lot of times I will want, rather than having a grinder to mess with, I want something where I can dip a fine enough powder that I can dip a paintbrush into and tap the paintbrush off to feed like baby rainbows. But that's just kind of some personal choices. So a lot of times, like, I'll use Sarah Micron, for example. Sarah Micron is probably my go-to when it comes to baby rainbow fish for their first couple of weeks. If I haven't built up infusoria and when I'm not feeding live vinegar eels, because I love using live foods. Live foods are fantastic. I use a lot of live baby brine shrimp. I have to buy it by the giant, like, $50 tin from Brine Shrimp Direct. And the last time that my club did an order, there was 3 of us who went in, and we ordered something like 10 of those $50 tins for 3 guys. And that's enough baby brine for basically like 2 years at my current rate of fish if I'm hatching every other day or even daily. So yeah, for now, until I can get my garage cleared out and do my garage, I don't have a need for more. But when I do, then I'll be buying like tins of baby brine and just running that like crazy, because it's the absolute best food for your fish is live. Daphnia, Cyclops, baby brine. If you have smaller fish, now you get bigger stuff. Your bloodworms are kind of like potato chips. They don't have a super great nutritional quality to them unless it's a hardcore carnivore, like the carnivorous plecos, like zebra plecos, for example, or you get some of your big South American cichlids. But even they need something a little extra beyond just pure protein. So yeah, it's good. And Sharpie's Models and Aquatics, just because I saw that immediately. Yes, I have done spirulina powder. You can get it from health food supplement stores. It's great. It's super, super fine. It's wonderful. There's a little bit of mixture of other stuff in the Sarah Micron that I like, but if I was doing a fish that didn't need a crazy high protein level when they're young, I would look at just pure spirulina powder. I know that Dean uses it from time to time. I think on like angelfish, if I remember right, when they're really young, he uses spirulina powder. And Barbara, to answer you, scuds. I have not done scuds yet, only because I need to get scuds. I haven't kept a culture anywhere. I was actually getting some advice from Preston John about that, which he had a question I have to get to. But I'd been asking him about how he keeps them, because he uses them quite frequently for the puffers, and I kind of want to start looking at doing scuds. Eventually, I just have to have the setup for it, and then I can look more toward like that, just that extra live food in the regime. I've been trying to get my Daphnia culture going better, but it's like, I don't know, it's like stalling itself. It has a small population and keeps staying at that small population, which is kind of frustrating. Man, how far back was Preston's question? I'm trying to find Preston John's question. Sorry about that. He had a question that I saw, and then I answered a couple things. Haha! Phosphate. Why is it bad? From Preston John. So, phosphates, let me get this one off of here. Phoebe, hope that covers everything for you, buddy. Phosphates aren't inherently horrible. So, most of our food contains phosphates. They're often part of the filler package that's in there that helps act kind of as a like how we need fiber in our diets. Often those things help you push stuff out of your fish. For Fun RC, I'll get your question next. So why they're bad is that they're something that our plants don't naturally uptake really in any high amount. They need very small amounts of phosphate, and the foods have a lot more phosphates in them typically than the plants are ever going to need. So it can often, if we're overfeeding, you get an imbalance of phosphates and too much phosphates in the water, and algae will propagate and do really well off of phosphates because they're a single cell organism, unlike our plants. So they really only need like one thing to be out of whack that they can latch onto and go nuts on, and then it'll grow like crazy, especially string algae. String algae loves phosphate, and all your green hair, string hair algae that we all fight, we all deal with. I have it in little points in every tank. No one's perfect. And if they tell you they don't have algae, they're lying. I hate to break it to you. There's tiny amounts of algae in every tank. It is in nature. You're never getting away from it. But that's what makes phosphates bad, is that it's something that makes it really easy for algae to latch onto and then kind of blow out of proportion in its growth, because the plants and a lot of the other things do not process it in the amounts that you would see if you start overfeeding your tank. So if you see a lot of algae, almost guaranteed you're overfeeding your tank, or you're running your lights way too long for the plants that you're keeping. Okay, so For Fun RC was asking about staghorn algae. I am only just now actually getting my first case of staghorn algae. So that being said, I've been pretty lucky just the way that Seattle's water is. It's really uncommon to get staghorn out here. Because I'm only seeing my first little case of it, what I typically have been doing is working on the balance of nutrients in my tank and hand removing the staghorn algae. So I'm just treating it like I would a lot of... if I'm having a big hair algae outburst where I'm going to manually remove as much as I physically can do so, and then I'm just going to keep working on my nutrient balance until I get it right and the plants overtake whatever nutrient that staghorn algae was feeding off of, and the staghorn algae stops thriving and goes away. I know that's not the easy answer, just do X, but honestly, that's just how we treat all algae, how we keep algae under control. You never get rid of algae, you just kind of keep it down to where it can't outcompete everything else, so there's so little in the tank that it's typically only the dust algae on your rock or your wood or your glass that is the stuff that's able to survive. Even now you can see this tank back here has little bits of dust algae all over the place, and I don't care because it gives stuff for my autos to eat that are in that tank. But yeah, and honestly, I think that's the easiest, or it's both the easiest and the hardest answer for you, is that it's really just playing a game of slowly balancing out everything in your tank and just hand removing all that staghorn algae. And not necessarily your hand, you could use tweezers or whatever. But yeah, in general, the solution to algae is more plants, whether you're propagating them or getting them to grow faster. I like things like putting in floating plants that will suck up a lot of excess nutrients for a little while and then getting rid of them. So I have lots of... Oh, you haven't been able to rub it off. Wow. I've always been able to manually remove what I get because I get mine grows kind of... The little bit that I have, it grows kind of long and thin. It's not harder on a single spot. Yeah, peroxide's probably good. You could also try taking a little pipette of Flourish Excel, just because that has glutaraldehyde. If you really want to go crazy, you could get actual glutaraldehyde, but the dosing is really, really, really careful on that. So it's a huge risk to have pure glutaraldehyde. I actually have a giant jug of it, and I've never opened it because I don't want to screw up. And I don't want to just murder fest my entire tank because I screwed off by a couple milliliters, or I did a bad math calculation. Nope, 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 nope. Like, I would try peroxide straight on it. You know, peroxide's pretty good at dealing with algae in the short term. Long term, it's just balancing everything out to where the algae cannot keep propagating, and the plants are out competing, or whatever else is in that tank is out competing the algae. Staghorn's tough. Like, it's kind of a rare algae, but wow, will not rub off. That's crazy. I wonder if I have a slightly different strain of staghorn then, because I have stuff that's like kind of like hair algae in the way that it grows, but it's definitely that kind of grayish white, you know, looks more like bony coral in its like shapes. But yeah, it's one of those things where some algae are tough. Like, my eternal struggle in a couple tanks has always been blackbeard. Funny story, my girlfriend loves the look of blackbeard and keeps joking that if she ever makes her own tank, she wants to do an aquascape that's nothing but blackbeard algae on rock. Everybody's got their jam, right? Okay, so scuds are really easy. Yeah, I've heard scuds are easy. I just gotta actually like set up a tank and do them, or put them where I want. Put them in a tank where I don't think they're like Preston was suggesting I put them in with my Blue Dream colony of shrimp, because the conditions are perfect and he's never seen them fight shrimp. So there's that. But I don't want to go like trying to harvest scuds out of that tank and then accidentally carry little shrimplets away or something. Yeah. So from Barbara Jackson, how do you tell the difference between taller 8 to 10 inch Sagittaria and Val? Had to give me a hard question, didn't you? So the both easy and hard answer at the same time is you can literally tell the difference in the leaf structure. So each of those like blades of grass, if you look at the way they're structured, this might actually require me to like give you some really detailed pictures and talk with you offline, Barbara. But you can generally see like Sagittaria will stay like uniform the whole way through, and a lot of the vowels you can see like kind of like layers inside the leaf structure when you've got good light coming through it. It's kind of hard to explain without seeing a picture, but it's literally you look at the leaf structure and you can tell the difference when they're submerged. It's a visual difference. Also, most of the vowels will get thicker leaves. Each of those blades is going to get quite a bit thicker. Well, okay, Italian vowel won't. Italian vowel is small, but if you're talking like American vowels or jungle vowels, they're going to get quite a bit thicker than the dwarf sag is, even when the dwarf sag gets tall. It really comes down to looking at the leaf and knowing the difference between the two. So shoot me an email and I'll try and get you really good pictures to show that. It might be harder than I want it to be, but I'll find a way. Well, there's also that. You can add liquid carbon, and if it all starts melting, it's Val, and if it doesn't start melting, it's dwarf Sagittaria. You could add liquid carbon, and if it starts dying, you've murdered your Val. Sharpies, models, and aquatics. Thank you. That's a good chuckle for a sick guy on a Saturday. So I'm going to do another community question in just a moment. Man, live stream looked cold. So much harder than I thought. So this one a little different. This is more topical. So from Cindy425, I would like to know more about green water, what causes it, and how to get rid of it naturally. So all green water is a algae bloom in the water itself. So rather than hair algae or dust algae, it's a more of a particulate algae that stays up in the water column. So how do you get green water? So if you don't have a culture that you're spawning from, right? For those of us who like green water for fish, what you will do is typically you'll take like half fresh tap water that's been dechlorinated and half old aquarium water, and you'll put it in a jug or a jar that's clear glass, and you'll put that in sunlight for a while. The other way that you can kind of accelerate it and create infusoria at the same time is to add like a small bit of ammonia. If you want specifically green water, you need ammonia. The cheap, easy way that people do this is they will put an amount of Miracle Grow in their water and then put that out there. And as the water turns green, it will consume all of that Miracle Grow. So that then becomes safe, and you can move it to like a 10-gallon tank to make 10 gallons worth of green water, or you can do just liquid ammonia. You can get, there's a lot of people who do that for cycling their tanks that can't do planted tanks. They will use actual ammonia to start building their bacteria load. There's a lot of tactics. You could also take like a couple pieces of small pieces of lettuce that are just about to wilt and start rotting, and throw that in there, and that will build infusoria at the same time, but it will also produce the ammonia you need to create green water if you get a hard amount of light. The big thing is just lots of light, because the algae is naturally going to occur in the water anyway, especially tank water, and then giving it a food source. So most people use Miracle Grow. You can just use some liquid ammonia, or you could use like a piece of just about to rot lettuce and throw it in there and let that start breaking down, creating the ammonia for you that the algae particles in the water, which create your green water, are going to feed off of, and then slowly let it turn green. That's how you get green water. That's how it's caused. How to get rid of it. So typically it's too much ammonia and too much light is what causes green water. How do you get rid of it? Get rid of its food source. So keep doing very like aggressive water changing. So if you're, let's say you've got, 40-gallon tank, do 50% water changes every other day, and that green water is going to go away really fast. Because the big thing is finding a way to get, basically you need to get the ammonia down and control it long term if you don't want green water to come back. And then if your tank is right by the window where it's getting tons of sunlight all the time, put something on the back of the tank that's going to shade some of that light away, or draw curtains or whatever to minimize the light on the tank. And then the algae particles that are in the water won't be able to survive. That being said, green water is super healthy for fish. It's not the most attractive thing to look at, but man, to go back to that story of that goldfish in green water in a garage in the cold, he did not care, because you have a consistent source of food in that algae-ridden water that he's just chowing down on. Like, it's just running through him naturally all the time. It's extremely healthy for baby fish because it gives all sorts of microorganisms for them to eat as a food source, so they can continuously have food available in the water column at all times. You actually get better growth, especially for rainbow fish in green water, than you will in anything else, because they can continually feed. They'll grow faster and healthier. Don't be scared of green water. Don't if you don't like it from an appearance standpoint, or it's like, I have a pretty planted tank, I don't want to see this ugly green water, I want to see my pretty planted tank. Aggressively water change, you'll get rid of it. And Chubby Guppy mentioned you can take lawn clippings. That's also another great thing, instead of like lettuce or whatever. If you mow your lawn pretty regularly, and you're not like me where your lawn just is like dead and doesn't grow all that well in the summer, lawn clippings are really good because it's going to break down pretty fast, and it's going to create everything you need to help feed that green water. Lucas Bretz is one of those guys who is a big proponent of green water. I actually need to create a new green water source so that I have it available for baby rainbows, just because I've had so much more success rearing rainbows using green water than I have without it. So it just makes me think I need to go back to it. Chat, do we have any more questions? I'm almost at, let's see here. We're going at an hour and 20 right now. Pretty strong. I'm going to try and go 2 hours. Just a heads up. So we've got about 40 minutes left. So if you have questions, maybe you want me to talk on a specific topic, shoot those in the chat. Make sure that you're at Bentley Pascoe. I'm going to take this brief moment to talk about a couple of things, and then probably also take a sip of water. So, number one, I talked about it earlier. There is a Fluval app update. I saw somebody mention this in chat. I am very feverishly working on a video for that. So I will go almost literally from doing live stream to going downstairs and finishing the filming I need to do on the Fluval app. And then I will get you an update on that one. It's really nice. It's very nice. Chef kiss style. I mean, it's good. The changes, it is incredible that Fluval actually listened. I'm fairly confident that they have a third-party software company that does this for them. So the fact that they kind of rehired that software company to do this update makes me very, very happy. Basically, the best light out there for your buck got better. And better is always good. So number two, we'll have Tank of the Week coming relatively soon. I've shot everything I need to shoot for the first Tank of the Week. I just have to edit it, but the Fluval video gets more kind of priority. So we'll start doing that once a week, unless my work schedule gets so hectic that I can't get one out for a week. But my goal is to make sure that you'll have 2 videos a week now, a standard video, and then a Tank of the Week. So yeah, those are the kind of major updates. I guess the only other thing is, if for some reason you are not a subscriber and you're watching this, consider subscribing. And let me explain why. Subscribers get access to the community tab. The community tab is literally what created, I'm going to put this back up. We showed this earlier. This is a poll that created Tank of the Week from a comment too. So this just shows you how much I pay attention to what you guys say in videos or say in the community tab. Longhouse Inc. left a comment in a community tab post saying like, hey, I just want one episode every couple weeks of each of your tanks doing an update. I'd like to see more of the tanks. I said, okay, I'll poll the community, and if the community wants it, that's what I'll do. Like me personally, I like making sure that when I show tanks, it's because there's reasonable updates to go over, rather than skipping on just like showing a tank versus doing an educational content or a product review or something like that, whatever I've been working on. But as you saw by that poll, like overwhelmingly Tank of the Week crushed every other option that I put out there. And only 102 people voted. So we're almost at 3,200 subscribers for the channel, which is crazy. I never thought I would get that far, especially not in the time. Like a year ago, I was, doing a giveaway for 100 subscribers, which if you haven't already done the giveaway for 3,000 subscribers, get that done. It only goes until the 31st. You have 4 more days, and you can get a couple plant packages, or maybe more importantly, an Amazon gift card. That one's actually available to anyone, pretty much anywhere. As long as you have Amazon, wherever you live, you can get an Amazon gift card for 25 American dollars, and whatever that translates to you locally. But yeah, it's just one of those things that like I really love being able to interact with you guys. I love the ability to let you have major influence in my channel, and why I'm saying like you should subscribe and you should pay attention to the community tab. So that's the little bell icon, says all notifications. That will give you notifications for the community tab, because 100 people got to decide an entirely different video every week. Out of 3,200 subscribers, that's a very small percentage. But then at the same time, you think about it, if you had 1% of the total vote of whatever political thing where you're from is, like, if you're in Britain and you got to decide the PM on if you were 1% of the vote toward the prime minister, let's just completely throw aside how it actually works over there, but think of how much power you have, right? That's a lot. 1% is a lot when it's a small community like this. So your voice matters so much when it comes to what I'm doing content, especially in the community tab. This is why I encourage people to subscribe and make sure you get all the notifications so that you can see when those community tabs posts come up. When I put up a poll, you have a lot of power in those polls. They directly influence what content I bring to you fastest, stuff like that. But yeah, it's one of those things where like I would heavily encourage, if you are a subscriber, make sure that you have the notifications just so you can see the community stuff, because that directly influences the stuff I produce. And then second, if you're not a subscriber and you're sitting there going like, well, I really want to see X, become a subscriber and get active in the community tab, because I pay a lot of attention to the stuff there. I read everybody's comments all the time. You'll notice that like if you have a heart by your comment, it means I read it. And then of course, if there's a reasonable thing that I need to reply to, I do my best to reply to as many comments as I can. But just, you guys have a ton of power there, and I cannot stress enough like how much attention I pay to it, because I want you guys to be able to feel like you get the ability to guide, kind of be the rudder of the ship, so to speak, where like you're kind of guiding how I'm doing things, and what you want to see out of the content that I provide. So that's how like the channel PSA, I suppose, like the please subscribe and check out the community tab, bros. You know, that kind of thing. All right. We'll push all that nonsense aside. We won't talk about any more silly YouTube thingamajibbers. Although please put that thumbs up button if you haven't. I'd appreciate it. We got 40 likes with 43 current viewers. That's pretty incredible. You guys are wonderful. We can return to questions. There was one, I think, before Alyssa's question. Otherwise, I think it's Alyssa's. Nope. Okay. Alyssa Bentley, the other member of Team Bentley. I ordered some of the white Anubias Nana Petite. You said direct light? Question mark. Yeah. Yeah. So, very much like... That's for fun, RC. I'll get back to you. So, like Pink Flamingo, in the crypt realm, the white Anubias really thrives off of strong. So it's one of the few things where the Anubias needs intense lighting. So what some of the best solutions I've seen are people that will get like those little stick-on shelves that you would normally use for mosses, and they'll put the Anubias up there on those shelves so it's really close to light, so it gets hyper intense lighting. That brings out more and more of the white in those, whether it's the variegated, the marble, the stardust, the pure white, the snow white. There's like 7 different varieties. It's all the same genetic mutation. It's just the frequency in which it shows. It just, intense lighting helps bring that white out and keep it there. You can lose it over time. However, if you get that plant back under intense light, new growth will have the white come in on it. I've had some that came in from a local club member who was not giving it good light, and all of his white Anubias has turned green. I put them in like the shallow tank downstairs under strong lighting, and they all turn white with their new growth. Their old growth stayed green. You can't like get it to color change, but all the new growth white again. And then also CO2 helps, like kind of like with anything that is a weird color morph that grows under kind of intense conditions. CO2 helps. Is it necessary? No, I've got plenty of white Anubias growing in hyper intense light with no CO2 whatsoever. But yeah, just treat it like pink animal crypt and you're fine. More from chat. That's right. Bad singing. Not only featured on Joel's channel, also featured on mine. Chubby Guppy, you've been getting some female Hawaiians with gorgeous greens in the female dorsals. Was this a common occurrence in your population, and did I cull it? I very rarely would see any intense color in the dorsals, and when I saw it, I would encourage it. Because I wanted more color in the dorsals on the females. Because the more color we can get on the females, the better. And I never saw babies from the few females that I started to see that ever have any bad coloration in the dorsal on their male offspring. Because of the, you well know 99% of the way the genetics and coloration come from a guppy are based off of the father. Very little comes from the mother. But there is, tiny amounts. So I tried to get more of them, but I think I've only seen 2 in my population, or like 3, very few. What I would do in your case, just because I know you're like hardcore guppy nerd, is I would start culling those females into a separate colony and picking a male that you really like and breeding that one male to those couple of females and seeing how that line separates differently from the other ones, and see if that becomes a color combination that you like more, or if you can create a slightly different strain that maybe gets a little more green tone in the dorsals of all those fish but maintains all that beautiful blue in the rest of the finnage and body. That would be really interesting to see over time. I spend too much time trying to raise rainbow fish, and they take forever to grow, so my tank space is not good enough for doing that myself. But I do have an experiment in mind with some of the blues of trying to intensify something very specific in a male that I have, where he's got a really nice sky blue dorsal, but the rest of him stays dark blue. And I want to see if I can breed that sky blue dorsal into more fish, because it looks really, really cool. Scottish Aquatics, my friend Scotty, which will be another heads up. I guess I haven't mentioned this. It's not channel related, but it's me related. The North Sound Aquarium Society. So for those of you in the northern part of Western Washington, or maybe even Vancouver, Canada, or if you really want to make a drive from Portland, in Everett, they will be hosting a swap meet next Saturday. So that's August the 3rd from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's going to be the longest swap meet I've ever been at, but I will be there with a table and a bunch of plants. If you want to just come hang out, it's right by Scuttlebutt Brewery, which makes some fantastic beer if you're a beer person. It's like literally an open lot in their, basically right in their parking lot area. It's right on the water by the Navy base. It's just a beautiful area. Weather's going to be great, or at least currently it says weather's going to be great. Seattle changes like every 5 seconds, so you can never really predict weather here, but weather's supposed to be nice. It's going to be a fun time. Hope Steele's going to be there. I know I'm going to see Scott there, at least for some period of time. But so Scottish Aquatics, who just had a fantastic tour on Aquarium Co-op. Scott is like mastered Anubias way better than I ever have. All his Anubias looks amazing, and some of mine just looks kind of ho-hum. But it's like, being a fellow YouTuber, I can't believe how much work and time goes into learning to professionally edit and make a video. You and me both. Like, I've been trying to up my game a lot, and the learning process is sometimes very overwhelming, but at the same time, I like challenges, so it's been really fun. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you do too, man. If you ever need any tips from someone who was previously an editing idiot and is now almost vaguely competent at editing, just let me know, buddy. You've got the bat phone to me. Then I'll be happy to help you out with the software I use or any of that kind of stuff. So Brian, I have a comment from you, sir. Embarrassingly, I struggle with Val. I can't keep it from not dying, but no growth. Pearlweed, Crips, and Moss doing well. Any suggestions? Wow. You know, I've seen a few people that struggle with Val. The first time I tried Jungle Val, it almost all died on me, and the second time I tried it, it took over a tank in like 20 minutes. So I think the big thing is don't heavily gravel vac your tank. So when I was paying more attention to making sure the substrate I had was a little cleaner, I wasn't letting too much mulm build up. This was earlier when I started doing plants. As I got more experience, I realized like it's just basically nutrients in the soil. A good mulm layer is basically like continuous fertilizer for those, and they will just go hog wild in it. That being said, like, you can also use root tabs. Vals, when they're first transitioning, they feed very heavily from their roots, so they need that strong kind of something sitting there for their roots to get that food source off of, and then afterward they can really take off and do pretty well. So that would be my big suggestion, is make sure they've got some food source down at the roots. If you're still struggling from there, try flow, because Val comes from areas with a bit more flow in a lot of cases where it does well. So try putting some flow directly on it. It tends to encourage the growth a little better and makes the plant just a little happier. Like where I grow Val right now, it's a 20 long, which is the worst place to grow Val, and I have a Fluval 206 on it. So it's pushing a lot of water through that tank and has pretty reasonable flow. but it's also full of rainbows, and they love flow, so who cares? So just a couple little tips. That's what has given me success with Val. It might not be the case for you, but I hope it is. Just not everybody can replicate off of one person's experience. Everybody's experience is unique. You know, the usual caveats of fish keeping. We return to the chat. Da, 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 da. Yeah, so, okay, for Fun RC, I mean, I guess I'm just stronger than other people. I don't know. I use razor blades when I'm removing stuff, and if you can't get things off of glass with a razor blade, like, I think you're doing it wrong. That's just me. So, like, when I'm cleaning stuff off of glass, I'm literally in there with my hand and a razor blade. It's just the most efficient, fastest way I've ever found. Like, credit card scrubbers, all that stuff. Like, no, screw that razor blade. You could use the mag floats with their scraper blade. It's pretty good, but I'm a very, with the exception of large tanks, I'm very hands-on with a razor blade. It just allows me a lot more control. It's a lot easier to do things. So when I'm ripping stuff off, now the particular algae I'm dealing with looks like staghorn, but it's growing on the plants. It's not growing on the glass. So if you're having stuff growing on glass and surfaces, and I mean, granted, if it's not glass, if it's on like a rock surface or something like that, so here's where this is weird. I used to do miniature wargaming a lot, so if I had something that was on rock that I couldn't get off, I would go and get my old sculpting kit, and I would literally be applying metal sculpting tools to my rock and scraping it off. I'm not afraid to be kind of aggressive with things like that, because I know that I'm not going to hurt my fish, because I have enough control in my hands. I'm not a complete bull in a china shop. I'm just like mostly a bull in a china shop. But I just, like I said, the water out here, the way that it is, it's really hard to get staghorn algae in the Pacific Northwest. Our water is just, there's nothing in it to grow that staghorn. And staghorn is kind of why it's hard to remove is because it naturally feeds off of some of the harder minerals, and those minerals don't exist in our water naturally. So when we're adding them as supplements, the plants are taking them as fast as they can get them, which is why we don't typically see that kind of algae out here. So hence, again, like the first little bits that I'm seeing it, it's kind of my first experience, and I have not had trouble removing it. Which means it might not be the same staghorn you're dealing with. It might be a different variant, or it might not be true staghorn. It might be something else that has that same kind of appearance, where it has that like stony coral kind of branchy look to it, and is kind of a gray-white color. But yeah, no, I know you don't want to beat a dead horse on this, but just like, don't be afraid to get aggressive. If all else fails, like, just, you could do the whole tank treatment of peroxide, and if that doesn't kill it, like, seriously look into, there is some stuff online about how to dose proper glutaraldehyde. You have to be really, really careful with your dosing, but that stuff will murder fest dang near anything. And if you really have to, take out all the things that are affected by it, if it's hardscape, and soak them in potassium permanganate, and that will murder it. Potassium permanganate is a heavy oxidizer. We use it sometimes in baths for plants if we're really scared about stuff, in short, like 10-second dips. But if you put a rock in potassium permanganate for like 5 minutes and then pull it out and just hyper wash that thing off, like pressure wash level washing, it will be safe to go back in your tank. You just need to like really, really thoroughly rinse it. Make sure that none of the potassium permanganate is left on the surface. You can do baths of potassium permanganate in fish at lower doses. So if there's small amounts left, several aggressive water changes will deal with it. But just understand, it's a heavy oxidizer. So it's gonna murder fest all sorts of organic matter. Which, I probably shouldn't say murder fest for monetization purposes, but it's the most accurate term I can think of. That's not an actual term. Okay. Woo. I just want to make sure I didn't miss something. Chewy, yes. So I do have an email. It is literally just my name. So bentley.pascoe@gmail.com. That's it. It's also in the about section of my channel, which you can see it only on a desktop. You can't see it on mobile. So if you watch typically on a mobile device, you're using like the YouTube app or mobile web, it will never show it to you. And I don't know why YouTube does that. but on a PC you can see it in the About section. It'll have a little thing that says for business inquiries or whatever. That has my email also. Feel free to email me. I do my best to answer as fast as I can. I can't always do it immediately, but I do my best to answer every email I receive. Just, don't send me too many, please. And don't sign me up for too much spam. That's all I ask. Okay, so Steve's Aquatics is asking, how do I deal with my tanks getting warm on these hot days? I cheat. I have air conditioning in my house. So that being said, how would I deal with it if I didn't have air conditioning? Because like my fry room does get pretty warm. It'll get up to about 86 in there, which you're probably sitting there going like, 86, that's nothing. I'm dealing with 104 temperature in, what is it, England? Was it England doing like the hundreds recently, or Germany? Crazy, crazy hot. You want to tell me that climate change isn't happening? My God. So evaporative cooling is your best bet. So the simplest thing is basically using something like fans. I've seen some people do some really cool like PC fan rigs where they wire a couple of like cheap PC fans up on a couple sets of PVC to let them shoot it over the top of the tank and just blow air straight down. And what that does is the air moving over the water causes evaporation, and the evaporation naturally sucks heat out of the tank. Evaporative cooling is really, really interesting. Look that stuff up on Google on how the science works. You can find YouTube videos about how to do evaporative cooling and why it works and the physics behind it. It's quite neat. The other thing you could, in theory, do if you want to kind of DIY hack some things, if you have an ice maker or you have a freezer, take several plastic water bottles, fill them like 85% of the way full of water, and freeze them and put that in your tank. So similar to like when I lost power and I was trying to heat tanks, or filling them with scalding hot water and putting them in there as temporary heaters, you can put big blocks of ice in a water bottle into your tank as a cooling unit to try and cool the water. And yes, the ice is going to melt over time, so you're literally going to have like a horde of bottles in your freezer and just rotate through them on those super hot days. But that is better than nothing if you can't set up some evaporative cooling. Just make sure that you're not doing too large a bottle. I would do like the small standard water bottles that you buy, for $5 for a rack of 24 of them or whatever it is at your grocery store. Open every single one, empty a bit of that water out because the ice is going to expand. You don't want to bust the bottle open, and then keep them sealed, freeze them. And once they're frozen, put them in, leave them sealed, and then just every time they melt all the way back down, put it back in the freezer as is, and just keep cycling through. I would say like one water bottle in a 40-gallon tank is probably enough. That might actually be overkill. And if you have smaller tanks, put less water in the water bottle so it's less ice, so it won't cool too extremely. And granted, if you still have running a heater, in theory your heater should kick on if the water gets too cold. You just don't want too significant a drop in water temperature, and make sure you have good flow so that warm water is circulating around that ice really, really effectively, so you're not creating too cold of a spot in your tank. If you have a way to like tether it or something right in front of your output so that the warm water is pushing right across that as it's moving out of the output of your filter, even better. That would be how I would deal with it if I wasn't a cheater and didn't have AC in my house. I am such a sissy when it comes to heat that I live in Washington State. I live, most importantly, in the Seattle area where it doesn't get that hot, and I have AC in my house. Because I do not do well in hot weather, so I don't have hot weather. Easiest explanation. Well, I'm going to mute again. I got to... Ooh, yeah, that's the epitome of health right there. So I hope that helps, Steve. I know that like some folks are dealing with some crazy hot weather right now, and that is the scariest thing known to man when you're dealing with fish, especially fish that aren't designed to go to like the 90s and stuff like discus can, of your water just getting too hot. Let's see here. Aquaballs is asking, when do you call yourself a fish breeder after how many types? I don't think it's about how many types. I mean, if you look at somebody, say, like Dean, who is a master breeder, and like, I don't know that there is anybody that breeds fish more efficiently than Dean that isn't like a professional fish farm. He only focuses on a couple species of fish at a time. Like, he's doing angels, he's doing rams, and he'll have some plecos, like his L333s, and some cories, but that's 4 species of fish. That's it. But he breeds them in quantity. You could be a fish breeder and only breed 1 species of guppies. You could have a guppy plant, tank for profit, and call yourself a fish breeder. The big thing is, I would say, the frequency in which you're breeding fish with the intent to then distribute them in some way, shape, or form, whether that's just to give them to friends or participate in your breeding program if you're in a fish club, or if you're selling them back to a store or to local hobbyists, right? I think it's kind of silly to be like, well, you have to do X in order to call yourself Y. Like, you could say that, there might be somebody who would say that I am not a master aquatic horticulturalist because I don't know the science behind it. It's like, yeah, but I've grown at this point nearly 200 species of plants. I've propagated nearly 200 species of aquatic plants and flowered another, like, I think 70 of those species. But I don't, like, I couldn't tell you by growing immersed cryptocorines and then cutting open the flower pods and looking at the flower internally, I couldn't tell you exactly what species it was just by the flower. So does that mean I'm not a master horticulturalist? Because a master would truly know that, right? It's one of those things. I hate, hate might be too strong a word. I dislike, let's put it that way. I dislike the thought that you have to have some magic qualification. Like, do you breed fish? Do you enjoy doing it? In your mind, are you a fish breeder? Then you're a fish breeder. Like, you don't have to breed like 35 species of fish to be like, I am now a fish breeder. You can breed 1 or you can breed 100. We're all hobbyists. We're all doing this. None of us are professionals. The professionals, like, they're crazy, right? Like, look at those tours of some of those farms in Israel that Corey did, right? Where they've got just millions of fish and just these huge vats, those U-shaped tanks and stuff like that of fish just everywhere. Or like when you went to Goliad Farms, right? There's just massive spans of fish being raised. None of us are doing it on that level. Even those who have big fish rooms, like even Lucas Bretz, right? He's got 300 tanks or whatever, and he is doing it for a living, but he's not at the farm level. Like, the fish farms are crazy. Those are true professional fish breeders. And I would never think that we would look at it and be like, well, until I get to that level, I'm not a fish breeder. Like, if I had just this Fluval Flex, but I was regularly breeding shrimp in it, I would call myself a shrimp breeder. If I was regularly breeding fish in it, I would call myself a fish breeder. It's not about the number of species or the number of fish. It's like, are you continuously doing it? Like, even if, like me, like, I'm a rainbow fish breeder, but it takes a year for my rainbow fish to get to a sellable size. So am I not a breeder because I can only sell fish like once a year for rainbows? Look at these. Oh, speaking of, look. Do you see the color in that? That kind of like dusky orange red. I really hope that's picking up well. I know it looks kind of washed out on my camera in my preview here, but man, these guys, like, just every once in a while, they're just like out and about in the flow, just chilling out. I just noticed it over my shoulder watching my replay here. But like, it's one of those things where I think that we in the hobby look too much at, in order to have this prestigious title, we have to have some kind of qualification. I think we do that to ourselves too much, and almost to a detriment. I don't think that there is a reason to say that I have to have X qualification. Now, from a perspective of like, your club has a breeding awards program like my club does, the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society, and to get the ranks there, they tend to have something like a great example. Gary Lang has talked about how MASSI, so the Missouri Aquarium Society, to become a master breeder, you have to breed from several different categories. You can't just breed a singular fish type. So you couldn't just only breed rainbow fish and become a master breeder. You have to breed some tetras, some danios, and some cories, and some plecos, or, you know, some kind of, you have to try your hand at a lot of different things. For like a certification, if you will, at a club level, sure, I understand where they put qualifications. It's an arbitrary way to define people putting in a certain level of work. But Dean has never participated in the Breeder Awards program in my club. And do you think that any member of our club doesn't realize that Dean is by far the best fish breeder in our club? Like, no. Dean's a like absolute machine at breeding fish. He is so good at what he does. And none of us are going to like be like, yeah, he's not a master breeder. He hasn't bred XYZ in the program. Like, no, the guy's good. But at the same time, there are members in our club where you're like, oh yeah, that's the person who's really good with angelfish. And that person is really good with gadids. And that person does like 17 different strains of guppy. That guy over there is this big shrimp nerd. He's got all sorts of cool shrimp. Like, I think that attaching a tag so heavily to like a number is just bad. Because like, I feel like, set it for yourself. If you want to call yourself a fish breeder because you're breeding 10 species of fish, cool. Or if you don't want to be like, yeah, I think when I've bred 20 species of fish, I could say that I'm a fish breeder. Okay, then slowly work toward those 20 species of fish. But if you just want to be the guppy guy, or maybe you just want to be the red Delta Moscow guppy or something, like you want to be that person, just do that one thing really well. And you will be that person. Like it's not about some arbitrary number. And I'm going on a really long tangent for this, but it's more about what makes you feel that you have accomplished that. The best critic is always ourselves, right? We're the most critical of ourselves that anyone else is going to be. And just as long as you're honest with yourself, like, am I the best rainbow fish breeder out there? Heck no. Heck no. There are guys that are way better at it than me. But at the same time, have I bred several species of rainbow? Yeah. Have I raised several species? Yeah. Can I do it with probably any species out there? Yes. Given time. That makes me a rainbow fish breeder. Do I have like 30 strains of guppies? No, I have one. And I love them. But I breed a lot of them. Not that I'm really working that hard. They do it for me. But, you know, it's one of those things where, like, I would consider myself a Shelly breeder because my Shelleys constantly have babies. I am not a pleco breeder because I've never bred plecos. But I would say that I am a shrimp breeder, a very minor shrimp breeder, because I have one colony of shrimp that have been breeding. I've bred cherries in the past, and I'm working on yellow neos. Do I know how to do caridina, like crystal shrimp? Nope. I am not a crystal shrimp breeder. I've never kept them. I want to, but I haven't done them yet. It's just one of those things, like, you got to find what makes you happy. What in your head feels like that level of accomplishment, and when you reach that, you are that. That's what it is. It's not about, don't strive to compete against other people. Strive to compete against yourself. Because if all you ever do is look at yourself and that next milestone for yourself, you will surpass those people that you might have tried to compete with anyway. Like, you don't... That drive to push past one person or one group of people is not as strong as that drive to keep pushing yourself. If you focus on that, if you always want to self-improve, you will self-improve. If you always focus on it, you always push on it. That's kind of like my philosophy in life when I approach things. I'm not competing with anyone else. I'm only competing with myself. And I'm highly competitive. I want to put this out there. So by doing that, by only focusing on whatever my next milestone is in my head or whatever competition I kind of put in myself, I kind of play like a game with myself, I get better than other people naturally. It's just how things are. Really long-winded way to say that, but I hope that gives you your own answer. I'm going to do the final community question, and then I will try to finish some more. We might go a little longer than 2 hours just because there's some other questions, and I know I'm scrolled up on chat and I've skipped some stuff, but I want to make sure that I cover all this stuff for you guys. I'm having a blast, even though I sound like hot garbage. Summer colds are the worst, man. They make you feel like absolute misery when the weather's like beautiful outside. It's like so terrible. Bam! From Charlie. Speaking of rainbows, your rainbows have laid eggs. You're a rainbow fish breeder now. What's next as far as water temp, additives to stop fungus, etc.? How much time do you have? No, I'm kidding. So the simple stuff is like most of the rainbow fish breeders, they tend to target about 83 degrees for baby fish. You don't have to. I would say 80 is fine. You could even do 78 for some of the cooler species like turquoise, which naturally like to be in slightly cooler water, like that 74, 76 range. You could target only like 78 for them. Like I have fish that have raised up in like 78-degree water. It's just slower, and you have a higher chance to lose fish. I've found that like 82, 83 is really good for raising fish, especially if you keep that very stable. That being said, that increases their metabolism, so they want more food. But before we ever get to that point, we have to like not fungus these eggs, right? The easiest way I've found to keep the eggs from fungusing is just water flow, and that is both hard and easy in a tank. So I've shown in a previous video those German breeding rings, and I will get them nice and clean. I'll put the eggs in the bottom and have the flow coming over the top, and that helps defungus the eggs. But if you really are struggling with fungusing in your eggs, what you'll want to do is something that Dean does. So you could get like a specimen container size container, or something small like that. Get your eggs in there with fresh water, and you might just put your whole mop in there and put like a single drop of methylene blue in a specimen container. And that will be enough to hold off the fungus. And then as you see fry in there, right, you're just going to go in. You can do it with a pipette, or you can do it with a spoon, however you want to. Just go in, get that fry out of the water, and then transfer it to the full tank. And then the little trace of like methylene blue that's going to come over with that small amount of water into the tank is not really going to hurt them. You just water change over after a few days, and you're fine. That small amount, when you transfer to a larger tank, like 10 gallons, that small amount is not going to harm those fish. It's fine. You could have fish like living in lightly methylene blued water the whole time, and they'll be okay for a while. It can increase the chance of those fish being sterile, but it's a pretty minimal risk with rainbow fish. So if you want the supernatural way, you do water flow. There's a video with the German breeding rings on like how I breed rainbow fish. Go check that out. It'll give you an idea. It's a product that Swiss Tropicals has, but you could make your own version of it relatively cheap. Those are kind of an expensive product, and I have some qualms with some of the stuff they do, but there is ways to get around it too. The other thing you could do is have like a jet lifter on a sponge filter or a matin filter, and make it so that your mop stays right in front of the output, so that there's good water flow right on those eggs, but then those fish can get out of the flow as they hatch and go to a calmer spot in the tank for their first couple of weeks of growth. Give me just a moment here. I'm gonna. Sorry about that. So water temp, the big reason why we go that 83 route is mostly to keep their metabolism up, so they eat faster, which means they will grow faster. So just look for those kind of things. And then food wise, you're going to start with a highly powdered food if you don't have a live food like infusoria or green water. So Sarah Micron, Golden Pearls. I like Micron more than Golden Pearls personally, but I know that like Gary Lang lives and swears by Golden Pearls. Just keep that in mind. For the first about 2 weeks, rainbows are going to be too small to take live baby brine shrimp, so you're going to use vinegar eels, infusoria, green water, that highly powered like 5 to 550 micron size food. And then from there, you can start feeding live baby brine shrimp, and you should feed live baby brine shrimp at least once a day. During that first couple of weeks, you want to feed very incredibly small amounts of food. If you don't have like that green water or infusoria where there's constant food source, 3 to 4 times a day. And if you can't pull that off, at least twice. I try to do 3 times, so I'll go like right before I work, right when I get home from work, and then right before the lights go off if I didn't get home from really late from work that day. Or my roommate will help out and kind of give me an extra feeding in the early afternoon. So there's that. I hope that kind of gives you a brief synopsis. I have a couple videos on doing that, and I'll probably make some more updated ones as I make some changes around my fish room for some breeding processes. But make sure, just make sure that the biggest thing is not too much flow in the tank when they first hatch, because they're pretty weak swimmers to start, and they stay in the top about quarter-inch of water. So you don't want a lot of flow up in that top area. It can tire them out so much that they die. And then the big thing is just keep your parameters very, very stable, very clean water. That's it. They're really hardy. And if you have green water, raise them in green water. It's so easy. Raise them for like the first several months in green water. Like I've left, when I did green water the first time with some Bozeman rainbows, I left them in green water for basically the first 2 months, and they were the healthiest batch of fish I've had. And I don't know why I haven't been doing that. I think mostly it's been maintaining my green water. So I basically have to get green water going again, because I've got a bunch of fish I need to breed, and green water is just like a godsend when you're doing that. So I hope that helps, Charlie. We'll go back to chat, and we'll get the last couple questions before we're done for this lovely Saturday morning. So from Sharpie's Models and Aquatics, my big female yo-yo loach looks to be full of eggs. Any chance of a spawn? There are 3 males. Yes. I don't know. I had a local club member who was trying to get her dojo loach to spawn, and like kept looking very obviously full of eggs, and then it just like never happened. So breeding loaches in captivity is really tough. Although I think Goliath Farms does it right. They were breeding clown loaches. So I would look at kind of what some of their advice for clown loaches, because you could probably apply it to your yo-yo loaches. I know that loaches in general tend to be really hard to get to breed in captivity, or at least the kind of the bigger squiggly loaches, as opposed to say like reticulated hillstream loaches. But I bet you can use some of those techniques with your YOLO loach and probably have some success. But yeah, I would say there's got to be a chance. There's always a chance, as long as like the parameters in your fish tank are good and the fish feel like they're in a good, healthy environment, and there's food for the baby fish. There's always a chance that those fish are going to breed. Just plain and simple. I have an email. Good to know. I will get to it as soon as I can, Chewy, just as a heads up. So Sean is my like local Shelly fan, just Sean OOTD in the chat. And he's like, speaking of breeding my Sumbu, still haven't had fry, driving me nuts since I see constant breeding behavior and color. Just be patient, man. They'll do their thing. Fish love to like make you feel like they're never going to do something, and then all of a sudden do it. Oh, also, this is great. Sorry. Chubby Guppy had some other good advice other than doing water bottles. You could take like a Ziploc bag full of ice and put it on the outside of your tank. So against the glass if you're a glass tank, because glass naturally will leach heat really well. It's a good heat conductor. So if you have it on the outside of the tank and there's a cold thing touching the glass, it's going to pull that heat out of the tank. That's actually really good. I totally forgot that that's another great method other than the water bottles in the water. But it's a kind of the similar method of what evaporative cooling is trying to do, from a very different perspective. But yeah, it can. That's another way to kind of pull some heat out of your tank in these crazy hot times. Okay, I went on a giant tangent, so I know I missed a lot of chat when I was talking about like, titling yourself and things like that. Hot Garbage sounds like a punk rock band. It probably is somewhere. It's got to be at this point. Tampa Tom just leaving the beach. That rough life listening to a live stream on a beach. Oh man, Aquaball is having some hard time with fungus on discus eggs. So I know that Dean, with his discus eggs when he was doing it in the past, and angelfish eggs, he will take the entire like cone of slate or whatever and just put it in a thing with a little bit of methylene blue, because those just, if they don't get really good water flow, they will fungus. Plain and simple. It's really unfortunate, but that's just what they do. Oh, yeah, that's another thing. So if you do want to keep rainbow fungus off rainbow eggs and Cory eggs, cherry shrimp. Don't do snails, and don't do a mono shrimp. Cherry shrimp. Cherry shrimp surprisingly do not bother eggs, even as small as rainbow eggs or some of the Cory eggs, and they tend to eat what causes the fungus, so they'll prevent fungus from going on those eggs, which is really, really cool. But yeah, it's one of those things where like you can create these things that don't exist in nature naturally that in captivity are really incredible for us in the hobby. So cherry shrimp, man, it's a good idea. Good idea. The chubby guppy. Yeah, but yeah, they basically can act as like a pseudo egg tumbler for eggs that don't want to be in a tumbler, because they'll sit there and they'll move the egg around while they're trying to collect all the stuff that's off of it, and yet they don't eat the eggs. It's crazy to me that cherry shrimp are so good at like not doing that. You would think that they would eat the protein source of the egg, but nope. Or at least not in my experience. I actually need to breed more. I'm looking at getting cherry shrimp again, specifically to have in all of my fry raising tanks, so that I have cherry shrimp to sit there and keep my eggs clean. And also get rid of, outcompete snails, so the snails can't try and grow in there. Jerks. Okay, do we have any other questions? I want to get to them. I want to make sure. If you guys got something you want me to babble on, I'll go a little bit longer. I don't mind. We're at our 2-hour mark, but I like talking, as you guys can tell. So if chat has any other questions, I'll get those. If not, then we will look at ending the stream. 54 Punchy. Pam! Hello, hello, hello. Use catappa leaf to keep fungus off of Cory eggs. Yeah, so probably the tannins in the water help prevent the fungusing. That's also a good idea. I think the big thing is for those of us who do like harder water fish, like rainbows and stuff like that, you typically like get scared of putting catappa leaves and tannins in your water, but yeah, it's not going to hurt them. Don't be afraid. Just buffer your water accordingly. That's another great piece of advice. Oh, Barbara Jackson, a good question that I have a terrible answer for. What is the trick to grow Java fern? The easy plant always melts to a tiny rhizome with a million tiny babies. So, what you are describing is how you propagate Java fern, which is that you're stressing it out, whether you mean to or not. And then it causes all those little seed pods that are on the back of the leaves will go and create babies. Those babies should actually be better adjusted to your new water, and I would grow out the babies from there personally. Some Java fern will really get set on whatever water it grew up in, and a lot of times they're grown immersed, right? So they don't want to convert very well. And then when you try to get them into your water, they freak out, they throw tons of child plants out, and they die. Like my first Java fern is dead, it's gone. But I have tons of Java fern Wendelov in the Guppy Mansion from that one particular plant. And that Java fern is doing fantastic and doesn't care no matter which tank I've put it in so far, because it's adjusted to the water here. So it's not a perfect answer for you, but I would almost say be kind of happy that it gave you a ton of child plants and use those child plants to create the Java fern you want. And you can start them really small and attach them to things, and they'll grow in and they'll look way better than that base Java fern you had ever will. Now, if you're just trying to start with Java fern and keep that one really nice Java fern, you don't want to risk a rarer microsorghum species or something like that, flow is really good for them. And they tend to like slightly harder water. So keep in mind that if you have a really low mineral content, like we Washingtonians who have nothing in our water, try adding a little bit of sea salt. So marine salt has a lot of trace minerals in it. You could put in something like a tablespoon per 25 to 30 gallons. Oh yeah, no. So here's the weird thing about Java fern babies. They're gonna grow out a little bit to a certain size, yay. And they're going to sit like that for a year and a half. And then out of nowhere, they're going to start growing out. Seriously. So all the stuff that I have in the Guppy Mansion, it sat and did not grow under CO2, mind you. There's CO2 in that tank. Not a lot, but a little bit. And it sat at that size for about a year. And then it finally decided, oh, I'm happy now, and I'm going to start taking off. Java ferns microsorghums in general are a really weird plant. I wish I had a more scientific answer for you. I really do. But basically, I would look at some of your trace minerals, make sure that you got a little bit more of those lying around. And if all else fails, like a little extra nitrogen just to help growth, or putting some brighter light on them. And if you're doing all of those things, then I don't know, honestly. Like, I'm certainly not perfect. Like, I might be a master aquatic horticulturist, but I don't have all the answers. I've just grown a lot of stuff, and I attribute that mostly to being lucky. And this stuff is the best. I love this stuff. But yeah, little bits of marine salt. It has more trace minerals in it, and I've actually used it when I start a planted tank to put a layer of trace minerals in that tank so that those first plants can start settling in. And then from there, like, I don't add salt very often, but I might say once every month or two add that same similar dose to after I've done enough water changes to kind of rebuild that mineral level on top of my fertilizer regime. It just adds a little extra trace minerals. It's kind of like putting Flourish Advance in your tank, which Flourish Advance is actually really good. It's the only product that I do really like in the Flourish line, and I wish that Aquarium Co-op would make their own version. Hint, hint, Corey. Hint, hint. Please make your own version of Advance or Trace. I would love you forever. But yeah, that's what I would do. Cichlids 23. What's the best salt to add to live baby brine shrimp to hatch? I will give you the exact stuff I use. I have had no issues whatsoever whenever I use this salt. And I get it off Amazon because you get it at stores too, but and you could do it doesn't necessarily have to be this manufacturer. You could do the Fritz version of this, but this is the stuff I have used. I just need to find it one more time. Perfect. All right, here we go. I will put a link in chat just so you have it. Come on, computer, you can do these things. So this is Red Sea's Coral Pro Salt. I love this stuff. You could also use just the regular marine salt that Red Sea makes. The Coral Pro just has slightly more of those trace minerals. And then I just do a tablespoon of salt per liter of water. So I will take literally like a 1 liter soda bottle. I'll put a tablespoon of salt in there. I'll put my water in, and I'll shake it like I'm shaking a mixed drink until it really thoroughly mixes. And then just call it good. Like, that's almost literally how I make my brine. And do not dechlorinate your water. If you have small chlorine, like we do here, if you have a lot of chlorine or you have chloramine, dechlorinate your water. But if you have a light amount of chlorine in your water, like you live, in the Seattle or Portland area, or similar to that, that your chlorine level is pretty low, leave it in there. And the reason why I say this is the guys at Brine Shrimp Direct have actually said that small amounts of chlorine help decapsulate those eggs so that the brine shrimp have a higher success of hatch. So if you have, like, say, an 85% hatch rate on your eggs is what it's advertised, you might actually see like 95 with that small amount of chlorine in there. It just helps make it a little bit easier for those brine shrimp to hatch out. That's just my combo of what I've been using. Take it as you will, but I've had no issues getting like basically 98% of my eggs to hatch like almost every time on the really good Brine Shrimp Direct eggs, which I think they're supposed to be a 95% hatch rate anyway. So keep that in mind. But yeah, this stuff, I love this stuff. This Red Sea salt, I have a big batch of it. This is the same salt that I'll add to my tank when I need to do like a small medicinal dose of salt. If I'm seeing like some, rainbows that have been sparring and they ram themselves into a piece of wood or a rock or something, so they've got a scrape on their scales, I'll do small medicinal doses of salt in my water, and then, usual water changes to get it out. And if they keep doing it over and over again, then I won't keep salting too much. But yeah, there's that. So that's the stuff I use. I like it a lot. Yeah, it might be a little bit much. You're spending 38 bucks for a big thing of salt, but that big thing of salt lasts you a long time when you're not like making salt water. Just as a heads up. When you're doing like a liter of water at a time to make brine shrimp eggs, that's gonna last forever. Do. Ha, damn it, Tom. You have had the very similar experience that I've had with moss in the past. So my Java moss did nothing for almost a year and has recently taken off and is now out of control. Welcome to moss. Some mosses are just like, nah, I don't want to do anything for a while. And then out of nowhere go like hog wild and take over a third of your tank. But yeah, it's pretty good. Tommy Two-Tone just got his first bottle of Easy Green. It will feel like Christmas. That's not, I don't joke with you guys. Like this is the only fertilizer I use. The only liquid fertilizer. I will use some root tabs. Just putting it out there. I will use some root tabs. But that and Easy Iron, that's all I use. All the plants I grow, everything. And you might be like, yeah, well, you don't have the most perfect color. I'm also not running like, a 5-pound tank of CO2 a day into my fish tank. I'm here to go more about plant health than like, Dutch aquascaping levels of color. And I also don't have like 3 hours a day to spend trimming my tank like some of the crazy people who do that stuff do. But that being said, like honestly, the balance of nutrients are so good in that I've never had reason to try anything else. I started with the Flourish line when I first started doing plants, and it was like, I think I'd bought it all, and then I found Aquarium Co-op the next day after I bought everything, and I'd used the Flourish stuff for like maybe 2 weeks, and I hated trying to dose it. I just gave up. I bought Easy Green. I've never gone back. I've never had a reason to. So that being said, Chubby Guppy has asked me if I've used Dustin's plant juice. No. I have had an opportunity to purchase some, and I have chosen not to. Not that it is not that it is a bad product. Like all the liquid fertilizers, whether it's the Nylock G stuff, whether it's Easy Green, whether it's Dustin's Grow Juice or whatever you want, they're all probably formulated the same. My problem with Justin's Grow Juice the last time, I think I said Justin. I'm sorry, Dustin. Whew. That's that sickness making you tired. The last time I had looked at the product itself, he did not give a breakdown of what's in it. So, like, if you go onto the Aquarium Co-op website, I was trying to see if it's actually on the bottle, but it's not. But if you go on the Aquarium Co-op website and you look at Easy Green, which I can pull that up for you right now. Oh, never mind. Candy's already done that for me. Thank you, Candy. You're wonderful. You'll actually see like the breakdown by percentages of what is in Easy Green. So you know like what percent of the nutrients are X, Y, and Z. Dustin's Growth Juice did not have that the last time I looked. And that inherently makes me wonder what the heck is in it. And if you won't tell me what is in it by percentages, I'm not ever going to buy your product. Transparency is king. And it really is important for me to be able to look at something and go, oh, you go a little bit higher on your calcium, or you go way higher on your nitrates, or whatever it is, to influence my dosing. So that if I'm dosing your product and I see some kind of thing going out of whack, my first instinct is, well, what's the different dose in that than what I was using beforehand? And if I don't have those numbers, like, I'm just never going to touch your product. At that point, you could be selling snake oil to me and telling me it's fertilizer. I'm not saying that he is, but just, Candy, man, slamming those stats out. There you go. There is the makeup by each of its appropriate chemicals in Easy Green. Tells you exactly what's in it by percentage. Transparency is king. Nylock G does the same stuff, and his Thrive is a great product. It's more expensive than Easy Green, and it does the same thing in the end. So I will get the locally made stuff. But that being said, I've met Colin in person. He's a super nice dude. He's really passionate about what he does. He makes some great products, like my Almost all of my atomic diffusers are the Nylock G ones, and I love those things. But yeah. Okay, yeah, it's good that he finally listed it, because he didn't have it listed for a while, and like I just won't touch it. But I also don't have a reason to try anything else. Like, I have such good success with Easy Green that I don't need to try anything else. I guess if I wanted to do some real fun, what I would do is set up a bunch of different plant ponds with the exact same plant load. They'd have to have the same plants to do this scientifically correct. And then I would try different fertilizers and watch the growth tank to tank to tank under the exact same specifications, and just following whatever their recommended dose instructions are. And then seeing also how long by the recommended dose and by cost, figuring out how much it's going to cost you to get that thing at that growth for a year in a comparative product. And then what is like the best value for your buck and all that kind of stuff. And this all sounds like a fantastic experiment. And if I have room in my garage at some point, I'm going to do that level of experimentation. But I don't have that level in my house right now. So like that would be the case where I would try something like Dustin versus Nylock G versus Easy Green. And there's some other ones. I'm trying to think what the other... There's another one out there. It has a really crazy looking bottle. But anyway, you know, it's all about personal choice. Like, I've had better experiences with Aquarium Co-op than I've had with anyone else. Just plain and simple. A lot of it's customer service related, but just the products in general that they carry, they have a lot of faith in, and they test. And I cannot say the same for some other retailers. Now, I don't want to ever want to badmouth anybody. That's not how I roll. But just, you know, I care about the people who always seek to make my satisfaction with my purchase a priority. Which Co-op does that. It's a reason why, like, I'm an affiliate of Aquarium Co-op. Like, I've had other options and I've declined them. Now, part of that is, that's my local fish store. I've been going there for a while. I like the employees there. I like the atmosphere there. I like everything about Aquarium Co-op. Just plain and simple. But given the opportunity, if I were to pick and choose out of all the U.S. retailers that I know, I would not make a different decision than I am now. Now, that being said, can I get cool rare plants from Aquarium Co-op? Nope. But can I get like really good products? Can I get like my favorite fertilizer? Yep. And that's all that matters to me. Like, I can find plants all over the place. That's not the issue. Just like a lot of people want Co-op to ship fish. And I totally get it. You want to be able to buy from the Co-op and get fish from the Co-op because they do a really good job of quarantining fish. But at the same time, like, you know, they've got their business model the way they want it right now until they crack the code on shipping fish as far as what makes them happy and gives them the service level they want to give. You have great other options out there, like the Wet Spot. The Wet Spot is fantastic at shipping fish, and they do a really good job. They have good pricing, and their shipping's not atrociously expensive, as I recall. That might be because they're in Portland and I'm up in Seattle, so that's a very short ship, so I don't have to pay any of the expensive stuff. But that gives you, you know, they're one of the best. And there's others out there, like, you know, there's Imperial Tropicals and Goliad farms you can buy directly from, right? And they had like leopard frog plecos dirt cheap. They were selling like leopard frog plecos for like $60 or something like that. It was insane. Like, they're like $120 a piece up here. I looked at it for a little while. I thought about it. But then I knew if I got leopard frog plecos and I didn't get zebra plecos, I would get like my ears screamed off by the YouTube community. But there's that. So Steve's Aquatics. Miles versus drive time are very different in the Seattle area. I only live like, I think it's 25 miles to the Co-op. Yeah, Wet Spot's fantastic for shipping fish. And I mean, some people have had bad experiences with the Wet Spot, but in general, I have heard like pretty glowing reviews for them. I've never shipped fish from them. I just drove down and picked stuff up because it's close enough. It's only a couple hours. But let me see my actual, like, I want to go to Google Maps and see my actual miles to the Co-op. because that now makes me curious. I know that by drive time it's about an hour because of traffic. So just to keep that in mind, I drive an hour to my local fish store. And that's in good traffic on the weekend, not in bad traffic. I had to go to Aquarium Co-op in the middle of the week to pick up Jimmy's fish. It took me an hour and 45 minutes to get home from Aquarium Co-op. And if I go there late enough in the day, it's like, I think only 40 minutes. So that's the good traffic. So if I were to get directions to Aquarium Co-op from my home, I would be driving 35 miles, almost on the nose. It's 34.7 miles from the Aquarium Co-op to my house. So just to give you an idea, 35 miles, and that's almost pure freeway the whole time, and it takes me an hour to get there because Seattle traffic sucks. It sucks. But the big thing is just I will happily drive farther to get the best experience. I believe very heavily in quality over ease or price. I will pay more for quality than rather to get that screaming deal. That's just kind of what it is. Yuji Aquatics. So if you're talking about my sword plants, it's because my plecos have been eating them. But if you mean specifically what's going to make plants look like Swiss cheese, it is almost universally a nitrogen deficiency. It can be... Sorry, I gotta blow my nose again. My bad. Give me just half a second. We'll talk more about this. Get my mouse. Man, I'm feeling fantastic over here. Sorry, I know this is like the worst sight to see of some guy just like dripping like a faucet on your live stream, but we do what we do for the love of fish, right? So I actually want to bring this up. There's a great like plant deficiency chart. Because I think like every person should just have this little graphic lying around. Whoop. I'm going to give you guys a link to it. Because it's really, really good. I should probably get a smaller version of this, but... Bam. What? No, I have to put this through a like editor. Wow, my lord, this is so long. Has to be a way to get this smaller. One sec. Aha! Glorious victory. Google's trying to cheat me. There you go. So there is also so spots and holes can also be a deficiency in manganese. Nitrogen is typically really common for certain plants. However, manganese is another thing. That's a trace mineral. Getting just manganese can be kind of tough unless you're doing dry ferts, but yeah. I do not need a nap. I just woke up. No, it's mostly just that like I'm at the state. I took medication like right before the stream that's trying to like get everything out of me, so I'm gonna naturally be a little drippier. I'm actually like hot as can be right now, but that's mostly that whole like on camera and stuff. So I just need water. I just need to be hydrated. That's all. I'm doing good. Like, seriously. I actually feel a lot better than I did, like, 2 days ago. I just got all the stuff coming out. As joyous as that is. But, yeah. Oh, yeah. LA traffic. Man. So, usually, holes in your leaves are manganese. This deficiency chart is super good to have. This is, like, a really, really good resource for people. A cup of Baileys. Well, I don't drink coffee, and that's what you should have your Baileys with. Honestly, I am not much of a drinker. I don't drink very often. So if you do ever see me drinking, it's a very rare occurrence. And that being said, like, I will have like a drink, and I have a lot of friends that don't drink. Specifically, Joel is a great example, right? And I will never drink around those people. It's a courtesy thing. you could offer me some really, really nice stuff, and I would say no, just because it's a courtesy to those friends who either specifically do not like to drink or, more importantly, are like recovering. I've dealt with some issues of recovering from substance abuse in my family, so it's one of those things where I love to just pay that kind of respect to people who have gone through that process or are still in that process, right? Because like no addict is ever cured. You're always recovering. It's like the right mentality to take. And it's one of those things where like you paying that respect to those people matters so much more to me than like, that enjoyment of that one like rum and coke or that one nice beer or whatever it is, right? Like, don't get me wrong, I like a good beer every once in a while. I love a good, like a decent rum, great tequila, a good scotch. I love all these things, but so my phone's being loud. Hopefully you don't hear that. It's just one of those things where like I don't drink very often, and a lot of that is because a lot of the people I hang out with are specifically non-drinkers because they're recovering from issues. So, yeah, I'm not that person who's going to be like, I need a good stiff like hot toddy or something to cure this up. Nah, that's not me. Just like my mom's a pharmacist, man. I just put enough like your Mucinex type stuff through me and a bunch of water, and I'll be fine. I sound more miserable than I probably actually am, but yeah. However, if we were talking about some of the other members of my family, their question would be how much coffee do you want with your Baileys or Kahlua, and not the other way around. I'm supposed to add coffee to it. Oh man. But yeah, okay. So we'll give it kind of a last call for questions. We're at 2.5 hours according to my live time down here. Although I know some of that was me like prepping the stream and stuff, so it's not actually live that long. But we're going pretty good here. We're almost to that time. Ooh, butterscotch. That's my dad's favorite. Actually, is butterscotch. Random things you didn't know. So I'll go over a couple like I guess PSAs for the channel. Before we take off, just in case a question shows. But so again, Fluval app got an update. I am working on a video. I'll be doing that today rather. Not tonight. It's still very early in the day. Finishing the rest of the filming for that, editing it. I'll try to have it out next Saturday. We'll be starting Tank of the Week here very, very soon. I've shot the very first one, and then it has to go through editing, and I'll shoot probably the second one this weekend too. I hope. It depends, but those are the things to look forward to. If you are not a subscriber and you're watching this, I highly encourage you to subscribe, and let me explain why. The community tab is the thing that has pushed forward an entirely new video a week, and like I'm just gonna like force this in. And here's where this poll went up on my community page for the channel, and as you'll see here, there's 102 people that voted. If you look under that part that says read more, this all came from one comment in the community section. And I decided it was a good enough idea that I'd create a poll. And 102 people voted. And you can see overwhelmingly Tank of the Week, a short look into one tank each week. That's a new video that'll be out on Wednesdays. Starting, I hope, August 7th. I think is what I'm going to try to like the first Wednesday in August, and then just do every Wednesday from there on out. But you have to be a subscriber to interact on the community tab. And this literally 100 people on a 3,200 subscriber channel have decided what an entire video is. So if you subscribe, you make sure you hit that bell so you see all the things. So you see the community tab posts, you get all notifications, and then you participate in the community tab. You will have direct influence on exactly what content you see on this channel. You're kind of like my rudder. The folks in the community tab, you are my rudder. So for those of you who are subscribers and you don't visit the community tab very often, or maybe you don't have the little bell for all notifications hit, I highly encourage you to do so. It gives you an opportunity to directly influence what you see and what I do for you guys. So that's just the thing. Like that's my suggestion, and then I'll answer this kind of quick question from Mr. UG Aquatics, and that is, well, I guess it's just Aquatics, right? There's no actual A. Aquatics, one could say. What's new about Fluval in a nutshell? So you have the ability to remove devices, which previously I could not. Maybe other people could, but I could not remove devices. So if I had one that broke, which I had one that had its Bluetooth controller go bad and I had to warranty it out. I could not remove that device without uninstalling the entire application and reinstalling it and then repairing to everything. But now you can, which is nice. They've added one extra mode. So when you have sunset, or rather sunrise, day, sunset, night, and then you have sleep added. So you could have your blue light on if you want to do that night for a little bit, for a little while, and then have it sleep and have no light whatsoever. So you can do a slightly better curve in your lights in the automatic mode, or now you have Pro mode. Pro mode is freaking awesome. You can set like actual curve and staggering your light timing. So you actually get to set timers basically. So this allows you to create siestas. It allows you to create a proper lighting curve. You could have more blue light in the morning, and then after you get to noon, your blue light can fade completely away. You could push more reds. There is a lot of power in Pro mode, and that is what I'm going to focus very heavily on. I have 4 new settings of lights that I'm going to be testing. I'm going to go over all 4 of those in Pro mode in the new video. So please, please, please be looking forward to that. And when that thing comes out, I would really appreciate it for you Fluval fans to share that with your friends who also have Fluval lights, because it's a big change. It's a lot of stuff. And the Fluval video that comes out and explains it is bad. It is not good at explaining its own product. I can't believe this. Like, they finally listened to us and they updated their software. And then the explanation is like too cut and dry. It's too simple. It doesn't. I've already seen people like Ricardo Santiago was having some problems with his light yesterday in Joel's chat, and I explained what was going on, and I think we fixed the problem. If not, he'll have it fixed as soon as my video's out. But it's not as straightforward as their video makes it out. But once you understand how to use it, the level of customization and control you have now in the Fluval light, if it was the best light on the market dollar for dollar before, it is now earth-shatteringly the best light on the market dollar for dollar. Just even with the price increase, I don't care. This is the best light you can buy for your money. Like, the UNS Titan is super powerful, but it's a $400 light. The ADA lights are like $400. The Twin Stars, the UNF flat ones, like all that stuff, or ONF I think it is. Yeah, they're all really cool. None of them can do what this light can do for its money. None of them. Oh, and also it has the longest warranty of any LED light that is commercially made out there. So the only thing that you will lose, so Kenny's mentioned this, he had a customer lose light with a firmware update. When I updated my firmware, the only thing I lost was my previous settings. I just had to reset all my settings in the light. But if it actually like killed the light, that's surprising. That I would be really surprised. With that being said, I've got, I think, 10 lights I have to update, so I'll be letting you know. Because if I have problems with it, then I'll probably explain some things differently. Like, that's part of what I have to finish my filming on, is I have all the rest of my lights to do. And then from there, I'll give proper feedback on what I saw in the updates and all that kind of stuff. But overall, it's a really, really good update. And it gives you so much power and control over that light in Pro mode. It's insane. As long as it uses the app, all the lights are affected because it affects the firmware. So, and then Huchi Aquatics is like making his own custom light, and I'm looking forward to it. Seriously, like I'm really interested. Light will not function. Wow, it bricked the light. That's intriguing. So I have some theories, but I would have to be able to like literally put my hands on his light. So there's that. Just some things from the software test realm. Maybe I'll go downstairs and look at my lights here very shortly, Candy. And if I come up with something, I'll email the store so that you'll see it. But yeah, I'll see if I can help just from the perspective of a professional software tester trying to fix firmware problems. So anyways, that's it. I'm gonna There's something from 416 guppies. Hold on, let me see what's going on. 416 guppies, what's going on, man? You have a problem with phosphate? So my biggest worry is if you're having a phosphate issue, would be maybe overfeeding. But realistically, there's I think Co-op carries them. Candy, do we still carry the? Does the Co-op still carry the phosphate remover pads? I can't remember who makes them, but they're like an orange package if I remember right. And of course, Fluval is no help. It's because the people who write the firmware aren't the people that are actually working for Fluval. There's a pad product out there, and I can't remember if Co-op carries it anymore. I think they do, but oh, your phosphate is too low. Just dose phosphate then. It sounds simple, but no. CChem has, in the Flourish line, CChem has a phosphate-specific dose that you can get that will only up your phosphate, if I remember correctly, and you could just get that. That's the easy way. Otherwise, I would say do powdered ferts, and you can get phosphate specifically in a powdered fert. Mix your own and dose that to increase your phosphates. Just don't increase it too high. You're going to get a ton of algae. Still, what are you keeping that's eating all your phosphates? Now I'm really curious. Now I'm just going to keep going. Now I'm very, very curious. I gotta wait for chat delay. This PPS Pro. Okay. Weird. Well, hey, I'll tell you what. 416 guppies. If you're still having some issues with your phosphate, assuming that this is freshwater and not some coral related thing, shoot me an email. So it's bentley.pascoe@gmail.com, exactly how I spell it on the channel. So just make sure this is the dot between Bentley and Pascoe. Shoot me an email. I'll try and help you out. I'll see if I can kind of using dirt. Ooh. See, here's the thing. Like, dirt's really great when it starts, but it doesn't hold nutrients all that well. Because, so our dirt naturally, right? When water hits it, it's washing nutrients through the dirt. It's not necessarily holding the dirt like an aqua soil will. Those baked clays and stuff like that, they tend to have a higher CEC capacity than dirt does. So it absorbs those things, where dirt just kind of lets it go through. And you keep rainbow fish, man, right up my alley. Are you having... So just email me, please, because I'll do my best to... Oh, Candy misspelled. But yeah, shoot me an email. I'll try to help you out. I should actually probably just like type it in the chat and not be an idiot about it. Here. This is my email. Bam. Both Candy and I. Double trouble. So yeah, shoot me an email. I'll do my best to help you out. But I mean, like, part of it is we're doing dirt, but we can fix this problem. It is solvable. Just the worry is getting too much phosphate in your water once you fix it. Okay, last question, and then I do need to go because I need to fill. I need to get to work on this video for the Fluval stuff, just because it's really good, and I really want people to know what to do with this thing. So Limnophilia aromatica, is it a hard plant to keep, or any tips? So Limnophilia aromatica likes high light, and it really likes a little bit of CO2. The biggest thing is just you can keep it without. I've kept it without CO2 before, but it really, really, really just does better with CO2. It doesn't need a lot. You could have it literally like one bubble a second in a 40-gallon tank and it'd be fine. But it just kind of needs that extra kick up. You can do just strong, very strong light, and just really good fertilizer, and you'd get the similar effect. But it's just, if you want to cheat and do it the lazy way, you put a little bit of CO2, and then it just will naturally thrive a lot better. It is kind of a picky plant at times. It doesn't like to convert to water systems all that well. It's just one of those plants that, like, it'll look like it's going to do fine, and it'll just like melt out of nowhere because it's like, nah, I don't like this water anymore. Or at least that's been my experience. That being said, once it settles in and it's happy with your water, it looks phenomenal. It grows really well. It's pretty simple, but it's just a little finicky. Chirish coming in late to the party. About to get the sign off. So yeah, that would be kind of my thing there, Mr. Santiago. Is just is it hard? No. Is it a little finicky? Yeah, definitely. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for attending. We have nearly hit the 3-hour mark. We went well over the usual. Well, at least it's technically like 2 hours 40 minutes, but still. Thank you very much for staying tuned. I really appreciate just all you guys like hanging in there, enjoying the stream. To Marshall, I know you've left, but for the $5 super chat, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I hope I answered everyone's questions really thoroughly. If I did not, in chat right there is my email, bentley.pascoe@gmail.com. I will be happy to do my best to help you. Just know that I can get a little busy at times, so there might be a slight delay in answering your email, but I will answer it as soon as I can and as thoroughly as I can. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.